Gerald Hunter stares at his last 3 nutrient packs, knowing that sharing them means likely death for himself. But the wheezing breaths of the elderly Elysian trapped beneath the rubble leave him no choice. His combat-worn fingers trace the edges of the sealed rations as the harsh Helios IV sun beats down through the shattered dome of New Alexandria Colony. The structural remains of the Cultural Exchange Center creak ominously above them. Gerald's helmet sensors flash warning indicators about the toxic atmospheric conditions outside the partially pressurized building. Through gaps in the debris, he observes the Elysian scholar's translucent blue skin, now pale and drawn from 5 days without sustenance. Her smaller frame and scholarly caste markings distinguish her from the warrior caste that had bombarded this colony into submission just days ago. "I am Karina," she manages between labored breaths, her crystalline features catching what little light filters through the ruins. "You should leave me. Your military protocols regarding my kind are quite clear." Gerald's combat training screams at him to treat her as a hostile, to conserve his supplies for the 80-kilometer trek to the nearest human outpost. But as he shifts his rifle to better inspect her trapped form, he sees the diplomatic insignia on her robes. A high-ranking member of the Elysian scholarly caste, one who had tried to prevent this very war. The ruins of New Alexandria stretch endlessly around them, a testament to the devastating 3-year conflict between humanity and the technologically superior Elysian Empire. The colony's main defensive installations lie in smoking ruins, victims of precision orbital strikes that had separated Gerald from his marine unit. Surface temperatures climb past 40 degrees Celsius, and his suit's environmental controls work overtime to compensate. "Ma'am, with respect to protocols, I've never been good at following orders I don't agree with," Gerald says, already breaking open the first ration pack. He knows Elysian biology demands daily nutrition, unlike humans who can survive weeks without food. Their blockade of the planet has made these 3 packets the last food supplies in the sector. As he helps Karina consume the life-saving nutrients, Gerald's tactical display tracks multiple Elysian patrol signatures in the distance. The suns of Helios IV cast long shadows through the devastated cityscape as he formulates a plan. They'll need to move soon. The cultural center's remaining structural integrity won't last another day. And somewhere in this toxic, superheated war zone, he'll have to find a way to ensure both their survival with dwindling supplies and filtered air. What starts as a simple act of compassion, a human soldier sharing his last meal with a starving enemy, could reshape the course of the war. But first, they need to survive long enough for Karina's testimony about human kindness to reach those who could end this conflict. As Gerald helps Karina consume the nutrient pack, she grips his arm with surprising strength. Her crystalline features shimmer with urgency. "There's something you need to know," she whispers, glancing at the ruins around them. "This cultural exchange center, it wasn't just for diplomacy. We discovered something beneath it, something that could end this war." Gerald's tactical display flashes another warning about an approaching patrol. He adjusts his position, keeping his rifle ready while maintaining cover behind a fallen support beam. "What do you mean?" "The predecessors," Karina says, her voice steadying. "An ancient species that inhabited this world long before either of our civilizations reached the stars. Their ruins lie beneath this colony, housing agricultural terraforming technology beyond anything our peoples possess." Gerald processes this information while scanning the perimeter. The ruins of New Alexandria take on new meaning, not just a battlefield, but the site of potentially civilization-altering discoveries. He spots useful debris, air filtration units from damaged environmental suits, pieces of structural panels that could serve as shelter. "Supreme Commander Thex buried this information," Karina continues. "The resource crisis driving our peoples apart, it could be solved, but the military leadership chose expansion over peace." A high-pitched whine cuts through the air. Gerald's motion tracker lights up an Elysian patrol drone, Model Hunter 7, sweeping their sector. He quickly assembles a makeshift shelter around Karina using debris and salvaged filtration systems. "Stay still," he instructs, taking aim at the drone through a gap in the wreckage. The shot needs to be precise, disable the sensors without destroying the memory core. The drone's crystalline housing glints in the harsh sunlight as it rotates, scanning for heat signatures. Gerald exhales slowly and squeezes the trigger. The round strikes exactly where he aimed, shattering the sensor array. The drone spirals down, crashing amid the rubble. But the damage is done. Its final transmission pulses out toward the nearest Elysian base. "We need to move," Gerald says, already retrieving the drone's memory core. The data reveals a maze of patrol routes and defensive positions, including automated turret networks covering all major evacuation routes. He mentally plots alternate paths through the ruins. Karina attempts to stand but stumbles. "The nutrient pack helped, but I need specialized supplements. Our forward medical facility, 20 kilometers east." Gerald checks his tactical display. The human outpost lies in the opposite direction, but Karina's deteriorating condition leaves little choice. He spots several damaged civilian vehicles. Nearby, their electromagnetic pulse generators could prove useful against Elysian security systems. Working quickly, he salvages essential components and assembles a mobile shelter for Karina using debris from the cultural center. The makeshift contraption incorporates the salvaged filtration systems and offers basic protection from the toxic atmosphere. Colonel Vex commands the Crystal Shard Division, Karina warns as Gerald helps her into the shelter. He's been tasked with eliminating anyone who knows about the predecessor ruins. That drone belonged to his unit. Gerald secures the last electromagnetic pulse generator to his combat webbing. The Helios IV Sons continue their merciless assault as he studies the drone's tactical data, plotting their approach to the Elysian medical facility. Around them, the creaking ruins of New Alexandria hold their secrets, both ancient and modern, while time runs out for both the wounded scholar and her vital intelligence. The tactical data from the downed drone illuminates Gerald's visor display as he guides Karina's makeshift shelter between towering wreckage. A glint of movement catches his eye, someone ducking behind a fallen support pillar. He raises his rifle, scanning through the debris. "Don't shoot," a male voice calls out. "I'm Human Marcus Mason, Agricultural Division." A weathered man in his mid-40s emerges, hands raised. His colony work uniform bears scorch marks and tears, but the hydroponics insignia remains visible. Gerald keeps his weapon trained until his suit's biometrics confirm human life signs. "How did you survive the bombardment?" Gerald asks, maintaining tactical awareness of their surroundings. "Underground hydroponics facility," Marcus answers, gesturing toward a partially concealed access hatch. "Still has working environmental systems and some fresh produce. Been living down there since the attack." A burst of static from Gerald's motion tracker interrupts them. Elysian ground forces approaching their position. "Inside now," he orders, helping Karina navigate the hatch's narrow opening. The hydroponics facility stretches before them in ordered rows of illuminated growing chambers. Filtered air flows through functional ventilation systems, and Gerald's suit sensors register acceptable atmospheric conditions. As Marcus secures the hatch, movement near the nutrient storage tanks draws Gerald's attention. "I treated 3 plasma burns today," a woman's voice announces. "I'm running low on supplies." Private Sarah Martinez steps into view, her combat medic insignia visible beneath dried blood and burn marks. She notices Karina and immediately moves to examine her. Elysian physiology, she needs specialized supplements. "The forward medical facility," Karina confirms weakly. 20 kilometers east. Sarah's expression darkens. "That's Colonel Vex's command post now, Crystal Shard Division. I've been monitoring their communications. They're planning something called Protocol Eternal Silence, full orbital bombardment of the colony within 48 hours. Marcus activates a holographic display of the colony's infrastructure network. These maintenance tunnels run throughout New Alexandria, including near their base perimeter. The hydroponics power grid, if we overload it properly, we could create an electromagnetic pulse, disable their defenses temporarily. Gerald studies the tunnel layout, comparing it with the drone's tactical data. 3 potential entry points, he notes, marking them on the display. Heavy warrior caste presence, minimal technical personnel, automated turrets at each corner. Sarah checks Karina's vitals with a portable scanner. She needs those supplements within 36 hours. And there's more. The base contains proof of what they found in the predecessor ruins, evidence of the military leadership's deception. Gerald examines the power grid schematics Marcus has pulled up. How long to modify the systems for an EMP burst? 4 hours to reconfigure the capacitors, Marcus answers, already gathering tools. The pulse will only last 90 seconds. That's our window, Gerald decides. He transfers the drone's security data to a portable terminal. Sarah, stabilize Karina. Marcus, start the modifications. I'll map our exact route through the tunnels. The next hours pass in focused preparation. Marcus rewires power systems while Sarah administers emergency treatments using her remaining supplies. Gerald plots their approach, memorizing guard rotations and defensive positions. Through it all, the facility's growing chambers cast their steady light, a reminder of humanity's persistence in this hostile environment. A warning indicator flashes on the hydroponics environmental controls surface temperatures climbing past safe thresholds as Helios IV's twin suns reach their apex. In less than 2 days, those same skis will rain destruction unless they succeed. Gerald checks his rifle's power cell and begins distributing salvaged equipment among the group. Time grows short, and the tunnels ahead hold both their salvation and greatest danger. Gerald checks his motion tracker one final time before leading the team into the maintenance tunnel access point. The hydroponics facility's lights dim as Marcus diverts power to the capacitors. Sarah secures the last of her medical supplies while keeping a steady hand on Karina's makeshift shelter. The tunnels stretch before them in a maze of utility conduits and structural supports. Gerald's tactical display overlays their planned route through the underground network. The air grows thicker as they descend, heavy with the scent of recycled atmosphere and corroding metal. Capacitors at 80%, Marcus whispers, monitoring the power readings on a salvaged diagnostic panel. EMP burst prepped and ready. They reach the first junction point. Gerald signals the team to hold position as he checks the sensor feed. 3 warrior caste guards occupy the security checkpoint 50 meters ahead, their crystalline forms casting prismatic reflections under the emergency lighting. Sarah, that sedative ready. Gerald keeps his voice low, already calculating angles of approach. She nods, preparing the injector. Fast-acting compound. 1 dose will drop an Elysian in seconds. The guard's conversation echoes through the tunnel standard patrol chatter about shift rotations and maintenance schedules. Gerald waits for the perfect moment, then moves. His Marine Corps close combat training takes over. The first guard goes down silently, a precise strike to the neural cluster at the base of their crystalline skull. The second turns, but Gerald is already inside their guard, using their own momentum to drive them into the wall. Sarah appears like a ghost, the injector finding its mark in the third guard's neck seam before they can activate their comm unit. Clear, Gerald announces, already stripping the environmental suits from the unconscious guards. Marcus, trigger the surge. The tunnel lights flicker as the hydroponics power grid overloads. A low-frequency pulse ripples through the base's systems, temporarily disabling security networks and communication arrays. Alarms die midway as backup power fails to engage. 90 seconds, Marcus reminds them, helping Karina into one of the acquired environmental suits. They split into teams at the next junction. Gerald and Sarah head east toward medical storage while Marcus guides Karina toward the command center's lower level. The stolen security badges grant them access through automated checkpoints. The medical storage facility appears deserted, its shelves lined with crystalline containers. Sarah quickly identifies the supplements Karina needs, but something else catches Gerald's attention: a cargo manifest displayed on a nearby terminal. Sarah, look at these shipping orders. Gerald scrolls through the data. Supplement stockpiles, enough for a full invasion force. 3 human colony worlds marked as primary targets. Supreme Commander Thex is planning more than just a cover-up, Sarah concludes, securing the needed supplements in her pack. Their comms crackle with Marcus's voice. Gerald, we've accessed the command files. Protocol Eternal silence, it's worse than we thought. The predecessor ruins contain orbital defense platforms. Thex plans to seize control of the entire network. A new alert flashes across Gerald's tactical display: multiple signatures entering the base's main hangar. Marcus, status report. Colonel Vex just arrived with a crystal shard platoon. They're beginning a security sweep, starting with lower levels. Gerald processes this information while checking their available routes. Sarah, get those supplements to Karina. Take the maintenance shaft behind medical storage. It connects to the tunnel network at Junction 7. What about you? Marcus found active predecessor systems in the tunnels. We might be able to use them as a diversion. Gerald transfers the patrol routes to Sarah's tactical display. Get Karina out. We'll cover your exit. Sarah disappears into the maintenance shaft as Gerald moves toward Marcus's position. The command center's lower-level houses rows of ancient terminals, their surfaces etched with symbols that pulse with faint light. Marcus works at an interface panel, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. These systems are integrated with the colony's power grid, Marcus explains without looking up. If we can trigger a controlled activation sequence. Heavy footsteps echo from above, crystal shard troops beginning their sweep. Gerald positions himself near the entrance, rifle ready. Through the doorway, he catches glimpses of towering crystalline forms moving with military precision. At their head stands Colonel Vex, his battle-scarred frame dominating the corridor. Marcus continues working at the ancient controls, sweat beading on his forehead as the search party draws closer. The predecessor symbols pulse faster, responding to his inputs. Above them, Colonel Vex barks orders to his troops in the harsh tones of the warrior caste. Time runs short as Gerald watches the tactical display track multiple hostile signatures converging on their position. The ancient machinery hums with building energy, its purpose still unknown, but their only chance at escape. A flicker of movement in Gerald's peripheral vision draws his attention to a concealed maintenance hatch. The ancient metal groans, and a figure emerges from the darkness: a man in a dust-covered research uniform, his graying hair and weathered features suggesting decades of academic work. Dr. James Wilson, Archaeological Division, he whispers, eyes darting between Gerald and Marcus. I monitored your approach through the ruined sensor network. We need to move quickly. The archaeologist leads them through a narrow passage lined with pulsing predecessor glyphs. Gerald's tactical display shows Colonel Vex's forces spreading through the upper levels in a systematic search pattern. I've been documenting these systems since before the invasion, Wilson explains, entering a sequence into a concealed access panel. The Elysians aren't just trying to hide the ruins there after the quantum-locked communication arrays that control the orbital defense platforms. A hidden door slides open, revealing Wilson's research bunker. Inside, screens display real-time data from sensors throughout the tunnel network. Sarah's voice crackles through Gerald's comm. Multiple hostiles converging on our position. Need alternate route. Bringing up tunnel schematics now, Wilson responds, fingers flying across holographic controls. There's a maintenance shaft that connects to this bunker, sending coordinates. Minutes later, Sarah helps Karina through the bunker entrance. The scholar's breathing has grown labored, her crystalline form dulled by advancing mineral deficiency. Sarah immediately begins preparing the stolen supplements while Wilson pulls up detailed scans of the predecessor systems. The ruins control terminal is in a sealed chamber nearby, Wilson indicates on the display. Karina, these glyphs, can you interpret them? The alien scholar studies the symbols through pain-clouded eyes. Yes, they're activation sequences, but triggering them will release a massive electromagnetic pulse. Marcus examines the power distribution readouts. Hostile patrols deploying sonic mapping units. They'll find us within 20 minutes. Gerald accesses the tactical network, nodding increased communication traffic from orbit. New orders from Supreme Commander Thek's Protocol Eternal Silence timeline accelerated. 6 hours until bombardment begins. The predecessor systems are our only chance, Wilson states, bringing up detailed schematics. Karina's knowledge of the glyphs combined with my research could let us seize control of the orbital platforms. Sarah looks up from administering Karina's treatment. The EMP will disable her life support. These supplements need at least 30 minutes to stabilize her system. Gerald studies the bunker's sensor feeds. Crystal Shard troops methodically sweep each sector, their sonic mapping devices gradually revealing the tunnel network's layout. He checks his tactical display 5 hours, 4 to 7 minutes until orbital bombardment begins. Marcus, can you create power surges in other sectors? Draw their attention away from this area. The engineer nods, accessing the colony's power grid. I can trigger emergency protocols in multiple zones, make them think we're moving toward the surface. Do it. Dr. Wilson, get that control chamber ready. Sarah, how soon can we move Karina? 15 minutes minimum. Any sooner risks complete system failure. Gerald transfers tactical data to everyone's displays. Marcus, start the power disruptions. Sarah, continue treatment. Wilson, show me the fastest route to those control systems. We need to coordinate this perfectly. The bunker's screens fill with alerts as Marcus initiates cascading power failures across the base. Above them, Crystal Shard teams diverge to investigate the disturbances. Colonel Vex's voice echoes through intercepted communications, ordering units to secure compromised sectors. Wilson guides Gerald through holographic schematics of the control chamber. The activation sequence requires precise timing. Once we start, we'll have seconds before the base's energy monitoring systems detect us. Sarah checks Karina's vitals. Her mineral levels are stabilizing, but the EMP will still be dangerous. We'll need to resume life support immediately after the pulse. 10 minutes until sonic mapping reveals this section, Marcus warns, fingers dancing across power distribution controls. Colonel Vex is deploying additional units with deep scanning equipment. Gerald overlays the tactical data with Wilson's schematics. They need to reach the control chamber, activate the predecessor systems, and transmit their evidence before the orbital bombardment begins. The cost of failure would be measured not just in lives lost on New Alexandria, but in the continuation of a war built on deception. The bunker's sensors track Crystal Shard troops moving steadily closer. Through the walls, the deep resonance of sonic mapping devices grows stronger. Gerald checks his rifle's power cell and motions the team toward the tunnel leading to the control chamber. Karina rises unsteadily, supported by Sarah, while Marcus makes final adjustments to the power grid. Remember, Wilson warns as they enter the tunnel, once we begin the activation sequence, there's no stopping it. The EMP will affect everything within the colony's perimeter. The ancient passage opens before them, its walls inscribed with flowing predecessor script. Each step takes them closer to either salvation or catastrophe, while above them, the forces of Colonel Vex draw ever nearer to their position. A shadow detaches itself from the tunnel wall ahead of them, a human figure moving with practiced stealth. Gerald raises his rifle, but the stranger's hand signal stops him. Terran Defense Force combat signs. Lieutenant Commander Drake Morrison, Shadow Ops, the figure whispers, revealing weathered features and calculating eyes. I've been tracking your movements through the base. We need to talk. Gerald keeps his weapon ready. Authenticate. Drake responds with current cycle verification codes. His next words drive the urgency of their situation home. Admiral Mason's fleet approaches New Alexandria. They don't know about the orbital platforms. Marcus's head snaps up. Richard is coming here. Your brother's fleet will be in range within hours, Drake confirms. We need those platforms under control before they arrive. Wilson accesses his bunker's security feeds. The control chamber requires immediate attention, but Karina needs stable life support before we attempt activation. Sarah examines the bunker's equipment. These archaeological storage units, could we modify an analog system, something shielded from the EMP? The old excavation gear, Wilson nods, moving to a dust-covered storage compartment. Marcus, help me with this. Gerald and Drake establish a defensive perimeter while Marcus and Wilson extract components from preserved archaeological equipment. Sarah administers another supplement dose to Karina, monitoring mineral absorption rates. Colonel Vex is deploying sonic mapping units in sections 4 through 7, Drake reports, checking sensor readings. Standard search pattern, but they're moving faster than expected. Marcus's hands move swiftly, adapting ancient technology. Power fluctuations are drawing attention. We need to disable their backup systems before attempting platform control. I know their generator configurations, Drake offers. We can trigger cascading failures, create electromagnetic interference to mask our position. Gerald studies the tactical overlay. 3 teams. Sarah and Wilson maintain Karina's life support. Marcus and Drake disable power systems. I'll establish defensive positions using salvaged Elysian equipment. A distant explosion rocks the tunnel network. Colonel Vex's forces beginning their breach attempts. Drake's motion sensors light up with multiple contacts. They're cutting through maintenance shaft walls, Drake warns. Thermal equipment, military grade. Marcus finishes connecting power cells to the modified life support unit. The predecessor interface is responding to both human and Elysian input patterns. Karina, these activation sequences. Dual species security protocols, she confirms, studying the glyphs. The systems require synchronized access from both races. Static bursts across their communications as Colonel Vex's voice cuts through encryption. Protocol Eternal Silence implementation authorized. All units prepare for immediate execution. We're out of time, Gerald announces. Drake, Marcus trigger those power failures. Sarah, status on Karina. Life support holding stable. The analog system should maintain basic functions through the EMP. Gerald positions salvaged weapon platforms at key junctions, while Drake and Marcus move toward the colony's power distribution nodes. Wilson monitors thermal scanning feeds, tracking multiple breach teams converging on their position. The tunnel walls vibrate with growing intensity as cutting equipment chews through ancient metal and stone. Gerald activates the modified Elysian defense turrets, their crystalline power cores humming to life. Through the bunker's sensors, they watch Marcus and Drake plant charges at critical power junctions. Charges set, Marcus reports. Detonation will cascade through their backup systems, create electromagnetic interference across all frequencies. Karina rises unsteadily, supported by Sarah. The control terminal requires both of us, Gerald. We must time the activation precisely with their power loss. Gerald moves to the ancient interface as Colonel Vex's forces breach the outer tunnels. The first explosion rocks the power grid, followed by a chain reaction of system failures. Warning klaxons die midway as darkness claims the colony's lower levels. Through emergency lighting, Gerald and Karina begin the activation sequence, their hands moving in sync across pulsing predecessor controls. Behind them, the first sounds of Crystal Shard troops echo through the maintenance, shafts the metallic screech of combat armor against stone, the distinctive hum of energy weapons powering up. The ancient machinery responds to their combined input, building power for a pulse that will change the course of the war if they can complete the sequence before Colonel Vex's forces reach them. Drake's motion sensors track multiple hostile signatures approaching from 3 directions as Marcus works to amplify the coming electromagnetic surge. Wilson's voice cuts through the growing chaos. Breach teams, 30 seconds to position. Contact! Drake calls out, pressing against the tunnel wall as plasma bolts illuminate the darkness. Major Kex's towering crystalline form emerges through the breach, sonic disruptors humming to life in his squad's hands. Gerald activates the salvaged Elysian defense turrets. Crystalline energy bursts catch 2 crystal shard troops in their advance, their armor fracturing under the concentrated fire. Drake triggers the first plasma mine as the squad pushes forward, the explosion forcing them to retreat several meters. The interface is responding, Karina announces, her hands trembling as they move across the control surface. But we need more power. Wilson's eyes lock onto the readings. The breaching charges damage the main power conduits. We're losing output. A violent tremor shakes the tunnel complex. Through their tactical feeds, orbital telemetry shows Admiral Mason's fleet engaging Elysian positions in high orbit. Supreme Commander Thex's response comes immediately energy signatures from the bombardment platform spike, as Protocol Eternal Silence initializes ahead of schedule. 15 minutes until orbital strike begins, Marcus announces, fingers flying across his interface. Wait those Elysian weapons. Their quantum batteries could provide enough power. Gerald studies the fallen crystal shard soldiers through the smoke. Cover me, I'm going for the batteries. Your presence affects the interface, Sarah interrupts, checking her medical scanner. Karina's crystalline structure is resonating with the systems, and the response amplifies when you're near. The predecessors built failsafes, Wilson realizes, examining the data. The systems only fully activate with both species present. We need Gerald here for the final sequence. Drake readies his rifle. I'll get the batteries. Marcus, sync your targeting data with my visor. Another tremor rocks the complex as Drake moves forward. Major Kex's voice carries through the tunnel. Second wave. Advance with sonic disruption pattern Delta. Gerald positions himself at the control terminal beside Karina, while Drake collects the quantum batteries from fallen Elysian troops. Sarah works swiftly to modify the analog life support system, integrating crystalline fragments from damaged equipment. Communications array shielded, she reports. Life support stability at 60%. Marcus patches into the colony's power grid. Ready to sync the quantum batteries with remaining power systems. Drake, we need 3 more. The tunnel fills with the distinctive howl of sonic weapons. Drake rolls behind a fallen support beam as the second wave advances. Through the chaos, a new voice echoes Colonel Vex himself, commanding from the forward position. The resonance is getting stronger, Karina observes, her crystalline form pulsing in sync with the ancient interface. Gerald, place your hand here. The control surface responds to their combined touch, ancient glyphs shifting and realigning. Wilson monitors the readings with growing excitement. The system's recognizing both genetic patterns. It's what the predecessors intended: cooperation between species. Drake returns with the final batteries, his armor scored by sonic impacts. Marcus immediately begins integrating them into the power system. Synchronizing discharge patterns. We'll have one shot at this. The tunnel rocks with renewed violence, not from combat but from the first stages of orbital bombardment. Colonel Vex's voice carries clearly now. All units, final assault. Secure that chamber at any cost. Gerald maintains contact with the interface while checking tactical displays. Through the security feeds, he watches Colonel Vex lead the charge personally, his crystalline armor gleaming in the emergency lighting. The modified defense turrets engage, but Vex's troops advance with practiced precision. Power synchronization at 80%, Marcus announces. 90. Ready for activation sequence. Sarah's medical scanner beeps urgently. Karina's mineral levels are critical. The resonance is draining her faster than the supplements can compensate. Wilson examines the communications array. Modified shielding in place. We can broadcast proof of the deception as soon as the pulse clears. Crystal shard forces breach the final barrier. Colonel Vex strides forward, his weapon trained on the control terminal. Step away from that interface. You have no conception of what you're interfering with. The quantum batteries reach full synchronization. Marcus's hand hovers over the activation control. Through the chamber's ancient walls, the rumble of orbital bombardment grows stronger. Gerald maintains his position at the terminal, feeling the systems respond to his and Karina's combined presence. The next few seconds will determine everything. The tension in the chamber crystallizes as Colonel Vex advances, his towering form casting shadows in the emergency lighting. Gerald maintains steady contact with the interface, feeling the ancient system's pulse beneath his fingertips. Your interference ends now, Vex declares, raising his weapon. A burst of plasma fire forces the colonel to duck behind a support column. Drake emerges from his defensive position, wielding a salvaged Elysian rifle with practiced precision. Move, I'll hold them. Marcus's hands fly across his modified power distribution console, integrating the quantum batteries harvested from fallen crystal shard troops. Power grid stabilizing. 60 seconds to full synchronization. The chamber shudders as the first orbital strikes impact the colony's outer districts. Dust cascades from ancient ceiling panels, and the tunnel network groans under the assault. Through their tactical feeds, they watch secondary access points collapse, channeling Vex's forces through the main approach. Incoming transmission, Wilson announces, his eyes widening at the data stream. Unknown source. A new voice cuts through their communications. Technical specialist Raven Zhang, Colony Data Center. I've breached Elysian command frequencies. Patching tactical data now. Holographic overlays materialize, displaying crystal shard troop movements in real time. Sarah integrates crystalline fragments into the life support system, watching as they resonate with Karina's biological structure. Mineral absorption stabilizing. Drake takes a sonic blast to his left side, the impact cracking his armor plating. He rolls behind cover, eliminating 3 advancing troops before his position becomes untenable. Can't hold much longer. The predecessor interface responds to Gerald and Karina's combined presence, ancient glyphs shifting faster now. Holographic data streams fill the air around them, displaying activation sequences for the orbital platforms. Wilson scans the patterns with growing excitement. 3 minutes for full startup, he announces. The platforms need stable power through the entire sequence. Major Kex leads his squad through the breach, sonic disruptors humming with deadly potential. The weapon's frequencies interfere with Marcus's power distribution network, causing fluctuations across the emergency nodes. Raven here, the transmission crackles. Priority message intercepted from Supreme Commander Thex. Orders to terminate Karina, they're afraid of her testimony about the ruins. The revelation ripples through the crystal shard ranks. Several troops hesitate, their weapons lowering slightly as they glance between Karina and their commander. The scholarly cast holds deep cultural significance, and the order to execute one of their own visibly disturbs them. Gerald analyzes the power readings, noting the strain on their improvised network. Without hesitation, he reaches for his armor's control panel, reconfiguring his power core's output. The surge of energy flows into Marcus's distribution system, stabilizing the interface connection but leaving Gerald exposed to Elysian weapons. "What are you doing?" Drake calls out, noticing Gerald's compromised defenses. "Maintaining connection," Gerald responds, his attention fixed on the control surface where his hand meets Karina's crystalline form. The interface pulses stronger now, ancient machinery humming deeper in the ruins. Colonel Vex observes Gerald's actions, his crystalline features shifting in what might be surprise. Behind him, more of his troops exchange uncertain glances. The human's willingness to risk his life to preserve a crystal shard scholar challenges their preconceptions. 60% completion, Wilson reports as another orbital strike rocks the complex. Admiral Mason's fleet engaging Elysian forces in high orbit. Marcus deploys the final plasma mines, sealing off the remaining access points. Power distribution holding at acceptable levels. Drake, fall back to secondary position. Vex raises his weapon but hesitates as half his squad stands motionless, their internal conflict visible in their rigid postures. The interface continues its activation sequence, each passing second bringing them closer to either salvation or destruction. 90 seconds remaining, Sarah announces, monitoring both Karina's vital signs and the system's startup progress. Technical Specialist Raven's data stream shows more crystal shard forces converging on their position through the single remaining access point. The chamber trembles under another bombardment wave as Colonel Vex makes his decision, stepping forward with his weapon trained on the control terminal. The interface glows brighter, ancient technology awakening under the combined influence of human and crystal shard biology, while the distant sounds of orbital combat echo through the ruins. The chamber's ancient walls shudder as Colonel Vex takes another step forward. Behind him, several crystal shard troops lower their weapons, their crystalline forms rigid with uncertainty. A female warrior breaks ranks, First Lieutenant Kara, her armor distinctive with scholarly markings denoting her role as cultural liaison. "These orders violate our most sacred principles," Kara announces, her crystalline voice resonating through the chamber. The scholarly caste is protected by ancient law. 2 more crystal shard soldiers move to flank her. Their weapons shift, targeting Vex's position instead of the control terminal. The colonel's features contort in fury as Kara and her followers take defensive positions around Gerald and Karina. "Raven here," the transmission cuts through the tension. "Corrupting targeting data stream now. Elysian fleet forced to suspend bombardment." The constant rumble of orbital strikes diminishes. Marcus's hands dance across his console, redistributing power through their failing network. Interface at 70%. Power fluctuations critical. Drake drags a fallen crystal shard soldier's armor to Marcus's position. "The crystalline structure, can we use it?" Sarah nods, already connecting sensor leads to the abandoned armor. The material's natural conductivity could stabilize the power grid. Wilson studies the interface readings with growing excitement. Energy signature increasing. The system's responding to the Elysian defectors, it's accelerating the process. Karina suddenly gasps, her crystalline form vibrating at an alarming frequency. The scholar's surface begins to fracture, hairline cracks spreading across her mineral structure. "Cellular destabilization," Sarah reports, medical scanner whirring. "The interface resonance is too strong." Gerald shifts his position, pressing closer to Karina's crystalline form. The interface energy courses through him, sending waves of burning pain through his nervous system. His armor's medical sensors flash urgent warnings, but the resonance feedback affecting Karina noticeably decreases. "Admiral Mason's forces establishing atmospheric control," Wilson announces. "No reinforcements getting through." Marcus and Drake work with Kara's defectors, integrating salvaged crystal shard armor into the power network. The crystalline materials pulse with energy, stabilizing the faltering distribution grid. One of the defectors provides technical insights about Elysian power systems, allowing Marcus to optimize the integration. Colonel Vex activates his armor's resonance crystals. The chamber fills with a high-pitched whine as energy radiates from his form. The interface flickers, its connection to Gerald and Karina wavering under the disruption. 95%, Wilson calls out. Maintain position. Lieutenant Kara raises her sonic disruptor. Colonel, stand down. You've seen the evidence of deception. You understand nothing, Vex snarls, advancing through the defensive line. The remaining loyal Crystal Shard troops move with him, their weapons charged. Drake targets the ceiling supports above Vex's position. Marcus, power to Section 4 defense turrets. On my mark. The prototype life support system keeping Karina stable begins to spark, its jury-rigged connections failing under the strain. Sarah rushes to bypass damaged circuits, while Gerald maintains physical contact with both Karina and the interface. His vital signs deteriorate as he absorbs more of the resonance feedback. The chamber's emergency lighting flickers as Colonel Vex's resonance field intensifies. Through the disruption, ancient glyphs continue their activation sequence across the control terminal's surface. The interface pulses stronger with each passing second, drawing power from the combined human and Elysian technology, now integrated into Marcus's distribution network. Lieutenant Kara's crystalline armor reflects the interface's glow as she stands firm between Vex and the terminal. The chamber fills with the sound of charging weapons as both loyal and defector forces prepare for the Colonel's final assault. The outcome now hangs in the balance as the interface counts down its final sequences, each moment bringing them closer to either revelation or oblivion. The interface's completion rate plummets as Vex's resonance field intensifies, the ancient glyphs flickering under the disruption. Wilson's eyes snap to his monitoring equipment. Dropping to 89%, field interference destabilizing the connection. Lieutenant Kara springs into action, positioning her crystalline form between Vex and the terminal. Her fellow defectors join her, their bodies forming a living shield that absorbs and redirects the disruptive energy. The resonance waves ripple across their surfaces in prismatic patterns. Marcus, Drake calls out, noticing a fluctuation in Vex's armor readings. The Colonel's power signature secondary systems are exposed. Marcus's fingers fly across his console. Raven, can you access his armor protocols? Affirmative. Raven's voice crackles through the comm, transmitting override codes now, disabling safety limiters. Vex staggers as his armor systems flash warning indicators. The Colonel's resonance field wavers as his life support readings drop into critical ranges. His crystalline features contort with fury as he diverts power to maintain the disruption, even as his armor's atmospheric processors begin to fail. A thunderous crash echoes through the chamber as a section of wall caves inward. Chief Engineer Victor Reeves leads a team of colonial engineers through the breach, carrying salvaged equipment and power components. Sarah. Victor calls out, rushing forward with an Elysian medical array. Got something that might help. Sarah integrates the medical equipment into her improvised life support system. The new hardware stabilizes Karina's deteriorating structure, but hairline fractures continue spreading across her surface. Cellular degradation slowing but still critical. Gerald's vision blurs as pain lances through his nervous system. His left arm goes numb, then his leg buckles. The medical readouts on his HUD flash urgent warnings about neural damage, but he maintains his grip on the interface. Power grid stabilizing, Marcus announces as Victor's team connects colonial core components to the distribution network. Interface energy throughput increasing. The chamber vibrates as Admiral Mason's fleet engages the Elysian ships above. Through their tactical feeds, they watch several enemy vessels break formation, creating gaps in the orbital bombardment pattern. The reprieve allows Victor's engineers to reinforce critical support structures with emergency bracing. New targeting data, Wilson announces, his eyes widening. Supreme Commander Thex is concentrating all remaining weapons on our position. Ancient machinery deep within the ruins hums to life. Orbital defense platforms, dormant for millennia, power up automatically. Their activation creates a visible distortion in the sky above New Alexandria as targeting protocols override both human and Elysian military systems. The platforms, Wilson breathes, analyzing the data stream. They're establishing a neutral zone. Colonel Vex's crystalline surface begins to pulse with increasing intensity. Marcus's console blares a warning. Power core overload detected. He's going critical. Gerald watches through pain-blurred vision as Vex charges forward, his armor's energy signature building toward detonation. The interface reads 97% completion. Karina's fractured form trembles against him as the ancient systems near activation. Lieutenant Kara and her defectors move to intercept their former commander. For the scholarly caste, she calls out, her troops forming a blocking pattern between Vex and the terminal. Sarah's medical scanner whirs frantically. Karina's structure reaching critical stress threshold. The chamber fills with crackling energy as Colonel Vex's armor reaches overload capacity. Above them, Supreme Commander Thex's weapons grid locks onto their position. The interface pulses stronger with each passing second as Gerald fights to maintain contact through his failing nervous system. Lieutenant Kara's crystalline troops brace for impact as their former commander charges forward, his form blazing with destructive potential. Through it all, the ancient glyphs continue their activation sequence, each pulse bringing the system closer to completion as human and crystal shard forces converge for the final confrontation. The air itself seems to crackle with tension as multiple vectors of destruction race toward their intersection point at the control terminal. Lieutenant Kara's crystalline form flashed with decision. Link formations, she commanded, her soldiers moving with practiced precision. Their bodies merged into a geometric pattern, crystalline structures interlocking at precise angles. The living wall solidified between Vex and the terminal just as the colonel's armor reached critical mass. The detonation filled the chamber with blinding light. The crystalline barrier fractured but held, containing the blast's fury. 3 of Kara's soldiers shattered, their fragments scattering across the floor. The remaining defenders maintained their positions, their surfaces scored and cracked but intact. Engineering team, move. Victor directed his personnel toward the scattered crystal fragments. They gathered the shards, integrating them into the power distribution network. Marcus's console displayed rapidly stabilizing energy patterns as the hybrid system achieved unprecedented efficiency. Raven, transmitting power configuration data now, Marcus called out, his fingers flying across the controls. Admiral Mason's fleet can adapt their shields using this pattern. Wilson's eyes widened as he studied Karina's readings. Sarah, look at these molecular patterns. Her structure isn't failing, it's evolving. Sarah analyzed the data, understanding dawning. Victor, we need that Elysian medical array reconfigured. We've been fighting the wrong battle. They worked together, adjusting the equipment to support rather than resist the transformation. Karina's crystalline surface began shifting, incorporating geometric patterns that matched the ancient glyphs. Gerald's legs gave out entirely. His vision narrowed to a pinpoint as neural damage cascaded through his system. Can't. Maintain. Hold position. Master Sergeant Hammond rushed forward, unspooling neural interface cables from salvaged Elysian medical equipment. Direct neural bridge coming online. This will hurt. The connection pierced Gerald's consciousness with white-hot intensity. His failing nervous system bypassed, the interface stabilized at 99%. Above them, the predecessor platforms activated. Energy fields rippled through orbit, systematically disabling weapons systems across both fleets. Multiple ships losing power, Wilson reported. Trajectory modeling shows impact zones across the colony. Admiral Mason's voice cut through their comm system. All vessels deploy magnetic tethers. Crystal shard defectors have provided viable anchor points for Elysian hull designs. The chamber's structural supports groaned as disabled ships passed through the atmosphere. Status displays showed the magnetic tether networks engaging, gradually stabilizing the falling vessels. Interface at 99.5%, Wilson announced. His console flashed new warnings. Multiple Elysian signatures detected in maintenance tunnels. Heavy assault units incoming. Sarah studied Gerald's deteriorating vital signs with growing alarm. The neural bridge sent cascading damage through his brain tissue with each passing second. Her medical scanner painted a clear picture: maintain the connection and risk permanent brain damage, or disconnect and lose their chance at activation. Lieutenant Kara positioned her remaining troops at key defensive points. We detect 12 assault units approaching through the lower tunnels. 2 minutes until contact. Crystal fragments crunched under Marcus's boots as he redirected power to the defensive systems. The hybrid network hummed with efficiency, but time was running out. Status displays showed Supreme Commander Thex's ground forces converging on their position, while Gerald's neural readings continued their deadly descent. The ancient interface pulsed with otherworldly light, each cycle bringing them closer to activation. Sarah's hands hovered over the neural bridge controls as Gerald's brain activity patterns became increasingly erratic. Through the chamber's reinforced walls, they heard the heavy footsteps of approaching Elysian assault units. The heavy footsteps grew louder as Sarah monitored Gerald's neural readings. The interface ticked to 99.8% when the first explosion rocked the outer walls. Elysian assault units breached the perimeter in waves of crystalline armor and charged weapons. Lieutenant Kara's voice cut through the chaos. Diamond formation. Target their joint segments. Her remaining troops moved with practiced efficiency, exploiting weaknesses in the Elysian assault patterns. Their coordinated strikes shattered 2 attackers before they could bring their weapons to bear. Raven's transmission crackled through the comm. Priority intercept Supreme Commander Thex to ground forces. They're activating Protocol 0. Number. Lieutenant Kara's crystalline surface dimmed. The resonance weapons were banned even during the Great Schism. Victor grabbed Sarah's arm. The resonance will tear apart their molecular structure. We need those shield panels now. His engineering team scrambled to mount salvaged electromagnetic plating along the chamber walls, their tools sparking against ancient metal. A wet cough drew Sarah's attention back to Gerald. Blood trickled from his nose as the neural bridge sent another surge through his system. The medical readouts painted a grim countdown: 3 minutes until permanent damage. Movement from a partially collapsed maintenance shaft caught Wilson's eye. A figure in a dust-covered lab coat emerged, carrying a portable data core. Dr. Petrov. Sarah called out. The research facility's crystalline samples showed cellular patterns I've never seen before, Elena Petrov said, connecting her data core to Sarah's medical station. Look at these regeneration cycles. Sarah's eyes widened as she studied the readings. Victor, I need those defector fragments you collected. We can create a crystalline buffer for the neural load. They worked quickly, integrating shards into Hammond's neural bridge array. Gerald's vital signs stabilized slightly as the hybrid connection distributed the interface strain. Marcus swore as his console flashed red. EMP signatures. The heavy units are powering up pulse weapons. The chamber's lights flickered. Victor redirected power through subsidiary nodes, but the network fluctuated under the electromagnetic assault. Above them, tactical displays showed Admiral Mason's fleet-splitting formation as a massive vessel descended through the atmosphere. Crystal throne detected, Wilson announced. resonance weapon batteries at full charge. The interface reached 99.9%. Ancient machinery hummed at frequencies that made Sarah's teeth vibrate. The crystalline structures throughout the chamber began to pulse in harmony. Lieutenant Kara straightened, her troops moving with enhanced speed and precision as the resonance strengthened their forms. The predecessor systems, Dr. Petrov breathed, scanning the effect. They're amplifying both crystalline and neural patterns. Gerald's hemorrhaging is slowing. Raven's voice cut in, transmitting Colonel Vex's command codes, executing protocol disruption. The attacking Elysian forces hesitated as conflicting orders flooded their tactical networks. 3 more crystal shard soldiers lowered their weapons, turning to join Kara's position. The remaining loyalists pressed their assault with renewed fury. 99.95%, Wilson called out. Through the reinforced ceiling, they heard the Crystal Throne's engines as it approached firing position. 30 seconds to interface completion. Dr. Petrov grabbed Sarah's arm. There's another option. The crystalline integration patterns they could stabilize his neural tissue permanently. You want to merge his brain with crystal fragments. Sarah stared at the procedure data scrolling across her screen. It's never been tested. The shock could kill him instantly. Gerald's next breath came as a gurgle. Blood vessels burst in his right eye as the neural bridge sent another surge through his system. The interface pulsed steadily, counting down the final seconds as the Crystal Throne's resonance weapons powered up to firing strength. Lieutenant Kara's forces engaged the Loyalists in close combat, crystalline forms shattering and reforming in deadly geometries throughout the chamber. Sarah's hands moved across her medical console, preparing the integration sequence as time ran out. One choice remained: risk Gerald's life on an untested procedure, or watch his mind burn out as the interface reached completion. Above them, the Crystal Throne's weapons reached full power, their deadly resonance building toward release. "Do it," Gerald gasped through blood-stained teeth. Sarah's fingers flew across her medical console, initiating the crystalline integration sequence. Dr. Petrov connected the salvaged crystal fragments to the neural bridge array while monitoring the molecular resonance patterns. The first crystal shard merged with Gerald's neural tissue in a burst of blue-white light. His body arched as crystalline structures propagated through his brain matter, following the paths of damaged neurons. The medical display showed his consciousness stabilizing even as portions of his gray matter transformed into lattices of translucent crystal. "Power spike," Marcus called out. Above them, the Crystal Throne's resonance weapons discharged. The air itself seemed to vibrate as destructive harmonics cascaded through the chamber. Lieutenant Kara's troops staggered, their crystalline forms distorting under the assault. Victor's electromagnetic shields flickered and warped, shielding at 40% capacity. But as the resonance waves struck their hybrid power network, the energy readings shifted. Instead of degrading, the network's efficiency increased. "The crystal fragments, they're absorbing the attack," Marcus said, adjusting power flow through his console. "Victor, we need more integration points. Feed the resonance through the salvaged shards." Engineering teams moved quickly, gathering crystal fragments from fallen soldiers and connecting them to power nodes throughout the chamber. Each new connection strengthened their defensive matrix. Gerald's transformation accelerated. Crystalline formations spread through his neural pathways, creating new synaptic connections. The interface climbed to 99.98%. Ancient machinery thrummed to life throughout the ruins. Massive crystalline pillars erupted from the ground around the bunker complex, their surfaces etched with familiar geometric patterns. "Predecessor defense grid online," Wilson announced, studying the sensor readings. "The pillars are generating counter-harmonic fields, resonance weapon effectiveness dropping to minimal levels." Raven's voice cut through their comms. "Executing command protocol disruption." The attacking Elysian forces hesitated as conflicting orders flooded their tactical networks. More crystal shard soldiers lowered their weapons, confused by the contradictory commands. Lieutenant Kara seized the moment. Strike teams, target their command nodes. Her defector forces moved with enhanced speed and precision, strengthened by the pillar's resonance field. They struck at vulnerable joint segments, shattering the heavy assault unit's coordination. The chamber shook violently. Through the reinforced ceiling, they heard the screech of failing thrusters. Crystal Throne's primary systems disabled, Wilson reported. But Thex is still coming down right on top of us. Expanding power network coverage, Marcus said, redirecting energy through the newly integrated crystal fragments. We might be able to extend the defensive field to absorb some of the impact. Gerald's consciousness expanded through the crystalline neural network. His awareness merged with the predecessor interface, accessing depths of information previously hidden. Besides him, Karina's form stabilized into a new configuration, neither fully human nor purely Elysian. Her crystalline structure pulsed in harmony with both Gerald's hybrid neurons and the ancient systems. The interface it's accepting both of their patterns, Dr. Petrov said, monitoring the transformation. The predecessors designed this technology for cross-species integration. Another impact rocked the chamber as the crystal throne descended through the colony's upper levels. Victor's engineering teams rushed to reinforce critical support structures, while Marcus expanded the hybrid power network's coverage. The interface reached 99%, ancient machinery humming at peak efficiency. Gerald's transformed consciousness connected directly with Karina's adapted form. Together, they interfaced with the predecessor systems at an unprecedented level. Information flowed between human, Elysian, and ancient technology in perfect synchronization. Above them, the Crystal Throne's massive hull blocked out the sky as Supreme Commander Thex's vessel began its final descent. Sarah monitored Gerald's neural patterns as crystalline structures continued spreading through his brain tissue. The transformation accelerated, threatening to overwhelm his human consciousness even as it granted him deeper access to the predecessor systems. They needed to complete the activation sequence before the Crystal Throne's impact, but the biological changes affecting both Gerald and Karina grew increasingly unstable with each passing second. The chamber's ancient walls groaned under the mounting pressure as shadow of Supreme Commander Thex's falling vessel loomed ever closer. Time was running out. Gerald's consciousness expanded through the crystalline matrix as the interface surged to completion. His transformed neural pathways lit up with new connections, each crystal fragment integrating seamlessly with his brain tissue. Through this hybrid network, he perceived the predecessor systems with startling clarity. "The pillars," he gasped through blood-stained lips. "I can feel them." His awareness extended outward, connecting with the massive crystalline structures that had erupted around the bunker. The ancient technology responded instantly, geometric patterns blazing with intense light as Gerald directed power through the network. Energy fields materialized above them, forming a reinforced dome of overlapping barriers just as the Crystal Throne's massive hull descended. The impact shook the entire complex. Supreme Commander Thex's vessel struck the protective field at terminal velocity, its momentum partially dispersed by the ancient technology. Metal screamed against crystal as the ship crashed through the upper levels, but the dome's resistance prevented total structural collapse. "Crystalline integration has reached the brain stem," Sarah announced, her fingers flying across the medical console. "Dr. Petrov, we need to stabilize his autonomic functions." Elena Petrov connected additional hybrid medical equipment, monitoring the transformation's progression. Implementing emergency protocols. "The crystal structures are completely integrated with his neural tissue. We can't reverse it now." The bunker's walls cracked under the strain as the Crystal Throne's wreckage came to rest above them. Through the hybrid network, Gerald detected movement within the crashed vessel. Supreme Commander Thex emerged from the twisted hull, accompanied by crystal shard berserkers whose crystalline forms bristled with grafted resonance weapons. Lieutenant Kara positioned her defector forces at key chokepoints. Crystal formations, standard defensive pattern. Her troops' bodies shifted into combat configurations as the berserkers attacked, resonance weapons discharging in devastating bursts. The chamber's power grid fluctuated wildly. Marcus diverted energy through backup channels while Victor's engineering teams rushed to repair damaged distribution nodes. "We're losing stability in sectors 3 and 7, Marcus called out. "The hybrid network can't sustain these power levels." A familiar voice cut through their tactical channel. "This is Major Harrison, 12th Marine Drop Corps. We have secured the perimeter and are moving to support your position." Armored figures in marine combat suits took up defensive positions around the bunker's exposed sections, their weapons coordinating with the crystal shard defectors in precise firing patterns. Gerald's transformed consciousness merged deeper with the predecessor systems. Ancient machinery activated throughout the ruins, reconstructing damaged sections with a combination of human and Elysian materials. Besides him, Karina's scholarly crystalline form adapted to match his transformation, incorporating elements of both species' biology. "The interface is stabilizing," she said, her voice resonating through both audio and crystalline frequencies. "Our hybrid patterns are reducing neural stress." Raven's transmission spread through all frequencies. "Attention, all crystal shard forces. Supreme Commander Thex's deception has been exposed. Protocol Eternal Silence was designed to eliminate pro-human elements within our society. Full evidence follows on all secured channels." Crystal Shard soldiers throughout the complex lowered their weapons as the data reached them. Supreme Commander Thex's elite guard wavered, their resonance weapons powering down as doubt spread through their ranks. The commander's crystalline surface pulsed with rage. "Initiate final contingency," Thex commanded, activating a hidden control sequence. Warning signals flashed across Wilson's tactical displays as resonance bombs throughout New Alexandria's infrastructure went live. The interface reached full activation under Gerald's guidance. Ancient data flowed through both human and Elysian networks, but his consciousness was split between managing the predecessor systems and fighting the crystal structures that threatened to overwhelm his remaining organic functions. High above, Admiral Mason's fleet secured orbital control as more crystal shard forces defected, leaving Supreme Commander Thex isolated but still deadly. Sarah monitored Gerald's vital signs as they fluctuated between human and crystalline patterns. The transformation had passed its critical threshold. His hybrid state was now permanent, offering both remarkable capabilities and unknown risks. Through their shared connection, Karina helped stabilize the interface process, but the strain on both their systems continued to mount as they confronted Thex's final daring plan. Thunder rippled through the bunker as the first resonance bomb detonated. The blast wave shattered crystalline support structures, sending fragments cascading across the chamber floor. Through his enhanced neural network, Gerald perceived the destructive harmonics propagating outward in precise, calculated patterns. "Multiple devices detected," he transmitted through the hybrid communications array. 23 additional bombs, positioned at structural weak points throughout the colony. Raven's algorithms process the data streams. Confirmed. The devices are networked. Each detonation amplifies the next in sequence. A second explosion rocked the facility. Crystal Shard soldiers on both sides staggered as the resonance waves disrupted their crystalline forms. Lieutenant Kara's troops struggled to maintain cohesion while engaging Thex's berserkers. Marine units, establish a defensive perimeter. Major Harrison's combat-suited troops moved with practiced efficiency, deploying portable shield generators at key chokepoints. We need those bombs neutralized before they bring down the entire colony. A new figure emerged from the Marine contingent. Captain Sarah Mason strode forward, her demolitions kit already active. I've studied these weapons. The resonance signatures match experimental prototypes we captured last year. She connected her equipment to Victor's engineering station. We'll need to modify the disarm sequences for each device. Gerald's hybrid consciousness expanded through the colony's infrastructure. The predecessor systems responded to his commands, converting metal and stone into crystalline composites resistant to resonance effects. Power demands spiked across the network. Load balancing critical, Marcus announced, his fingers dancing across multiple control surfaces. Rerouting through emergency capacitors. Dr. Petrov, what's the status on those biological modifications? Elena Petrov studied the medical readouts. Gerald's neural pattern could work as a template. The hybrid structures in his brain are naturally resistant to the resonance effects. She transmitted the data to Lieutenant Kara. We can adapt these configurations to protect your troops. More explosions echoed through the complex. Supreme Commander Thex led his remaining berserkers in a direct assault on the control terminal. Their resonance weapons discharged in synchronized bursts, forcing the defenders back. The strain is increasing, Karina observed, her scholarly demeanor unchanged despite her altered form. Gerald's organic systems are degrading under the neural load. Master Sergeant Hammond activated his modified neural bridge, implementing stabilization protocols. The predecessor tech should help maintain biological integrity. Admiral Mason's transmission cut through the chaos. Multiple Elysian warships detected on approach vector, reading heavy resonance weapon signatures. The fleet commander's voice remained steady. Lieutenant Kara, we need tactical data on their ship configurations. Captain Sarah Mason disabled another bomb, but the remaining devices shifted their detonation patterns. Their adapting these are more advanced than anything we've encountered. She analyzed the telemetry. The control systems are biolinked. Gerald's enhanced perception traced the command signals. Through the crystalline structures in his brain, he detected the direct neural connection. The bombs are slave to Thex's implants. He's the trigger. The chamber shuddered as another explosion tore through the colony's infrastructure. Crystal formations cracked and reformed. Human architecture merged with Elysian technology, and ancient systems pulsed with increasing power. In the midst of the chaos, Supreme Commander Thex raised his resonance weapon, targeting the hybrid neural interface that kept Gerald's consciousness intact. Lieutenant Kara's modified troops moved to intercept, their crystalline forms now resistant to the destructive harmonics. Major Harrison's Marines provided covering fire while Captain Mason worked to disable the next bomb in sequence. Time grew short as more colonial structures began to fail, and the approaching Elysian fleet drew ever closer to weapons range. Through their shared connection, Gerald and Karina directed the predecessor systems to accelerate their defensive transformations. The distinction between organic and crystalline, human and alien, ancient and modern began to blur as the interface reshaped reality around them. Supreme Commander Thex's finger tightened on his weapon's trigger, neural implants pulsing with deadly intent. Neural implants pulsing with deadly intent. A wave of resonance energy surged through the chamber as Sarah Mason dove behind a crystalline support pillar. The disarming sequence she'd been calculating flashed across her tactical display. Pattern identified. The detonation cascade follows Elysian military protocols. Her fingers danced across the bomb's control interface. Raven, I need encryption analysis. Processing, Raven responded through the hybrid network. Technical data streamed through crystalline pathways as her algorithms decoded the pattern. Mathematical progression confirmed. Next detonation calculated in Sector 8, followed by Sectors 3 and 12. Gerald's expanded consciousness tracked the bomb signatures through transformed neural pathways. Each device pulsed with unique frequencies, adapting to match the evolving crystalline structures throughout the colony. Sarah, the harmonics are shifting. They're targeting the hybrid materials. Major Harrison's voice crackled over the tactical net. Marines, form up on those bomb locations. Lieutenant Kara, I need your best troops on containment. Armored figures moved with practiced efficiency, crystal shard soldiers integrating seamlessly into their formations. Through the interface, Gerald channeled power into nearby crystal shard troops. Their forms stabilized as his hybrid neural pattern extended protection against the resonance effects. Each extension sent spikes of pain through his remaining organic tissue. Neural degradation accelerating, Dr. Petrov announced, monitoring his vital signs. The protective field is consuming biological resources faster than anticipated. A new voice cut through the command channel. This is Colonel Weber. I'm patching in from Research Facility 09. Schematics appeared on their displays. I have prototype dampening technology that might help. Sending coordinates now. Captain Mason studied the designs. These could work. Victor, can you modify the power distribution? Rerouting auxiliary systems, the chief engineer confirmed. But we're already at critical levels. Marcus, I need more juice for the conversion process. Marcus diverted power from non-essential systems. Done, but Admiral Mason's fleet engagement is drawing heavy resources. We can't maintain full coverage. Through their shared connection, Gerald sensed Karina's scholarly consciousness analyzing the colony's infrastructure. Her hybrid form interfaced directly with crystalline support systems, reinforcing stress sections. Structural integrity at 40%, she transmitted. The predecessor systems are adapting, but conversion rates cannot match bomb deployment. Supreme Commander Thex's berserkers press their attack, resonance weapons discharging in coordinated volleys. Lieutenant Kara's troops shifted to defensive formations, their modified crystalline structures now resistant to the harmful frequencies. Multiple defections confirmed, Raven reported as more crystal shard soldiers accessed her transmitted evidence. Enemy forces reduced by 60%. Thex backed toward a tertiary access corridor, his elite guard providing covering fire. You cannot stop what's coming. The colony's power core will serve its final purpose. Sarah Mason's voice carried urgency. Next device armed. Engineering team, I need those dampeners online. She worked furiously to disable the bomb's activation sequence, while Harrison's Marines engaged advancing berserkers. Gerald directed the predecessor systems to accelerate their defensive transformations. Walls shifted from metal to crystalline, composite, as hybrid technology spread through colonial infrastructure. Each extension of his protective field caused more organic systems to fail, the transformation consuming human tissue at an increasing rate. His cellular structure is destabilizing, Dr. Petrov warned. We're losing baseline neural patterns. Karina's evolved form pulsed with shared energy as she helped maintain their connection to the colony's systems. Redirecting power through secondary nodes. Gerald, focus on maintaining core functions. I'll handle peripheral systems. Admiral Mason's transmission carried static interference. Elysian fleet advancing on multiple vectors. Lieutenant Kara's tactical data is buying us time, but we need those ground defenses secured. Through crystal-enhanced senses, Gerald tracked Supreme Commander Thex's movement toward the power core. The commander's neural implants transmitted complex detonation codes, each pulse threatening to trigger the remaining bombs. Time grew short as colonial systems reported increasing strain, and the next wave of explosions loomed with mathematical certainty. The hybrid network expanded through transformed sections of the colony, merging human technology with Elysian crystal formations under the guidance of ancient predecessor systems. Sarah Mason raced to implement Colonel Weber's dampening devices, while Major Harrison's forces engaged the desperate remnants of Thex's loyal troops. Above them, the space battle raged as Admiral Mason's fleet fought to prevent Elysian reinforcements from reaching the surface. Gerald's consciousness stretched between multiple systems, fighting to maintain protective fields while managing his accelerating transformation. Through it all, Supreme Commander Thex moved with deadly purpose toward the colony's power core, each step bringing them closer to a final confrontation that would determine the fate of their hybrid civilization. Through the crystalline network, Gerald tracked Supreme Commander Thex's swift movement through the maintenance tunnels. The commander's neural signature pulsed with each activation of auxiliary systems, leaving a trail of increasing power signatures in his wake. Multiple backup nodes coming online, Marcus announced from the secondary command center. These readings. He transmitted the data through the hybrid network. The power core contains a quantum containment chamber. If Thex reaches it, he could amplify the resonance weapons beyond our ability to contain them. Major Harrison assessed the tactical display. Alpha and Bravo teams form up. We intercept Thex before he reaches that chamber. His strike team moved out, their boots echoing through transformed corridors. Sarah Mason's fingers flew across bomb control interfaces. Each disabled device emitted a unique frequency signature, pattern detected in the deactivation sequence. Raven analyzed these emissions. Processing, Raven responded. The signatures form elements of an encryption key. Collecting all components requires precise timing with the detonation progression. Gerald's protective field expanded through another section of colonial infrastructure. Crystal formations spread like living architecture, mimicking his hybrid resistance to resonance effects. Pain lanced through his remaining organic tissue. Cellular degradation accelerating, Dr. Petrov reported. Complete transformation estimated in 20 minutes. Gerald, you need to reduce field coverage. Negative, he transmitted. Maximum protection required for critical systems. Lieutenant Kara's troops engaged Berserker forces in the maintenance levels. Energy weapons discharged in confined spaces, scoring crystalline walls. Power conduit breach in Section 7. Victor's engineering teams rushed to contain the damage. Rerouting through tertiary systems, Marcus announced. Primary grid showing signs of cascade failure. We're losing stability across the network. Admiral Mason's transmission carried urgency. Elysian fleet retreating, but they've released their resonance cores. Orbital debris will impact in 30 minutes. Pattern matches the bomb sequence. Dr. Wilson's analysis flashed through the hybrid network. The predecessor systems there creating a crystalline neural matrix similar to Gerald's biology. We could use it to override Thex's bomb control. The integration would be complete, Karina observed, her hybrid form flickering as resonance waves increased, and likely fatal. Sarah Mason's voice cut through the command channel. Next device armed. I need this signature, but containment teams must be ready. Controlled detonation in 15 seconds. Harrison's strike team encountered heavy resistance near the quantum chamber's auxiliary controls. Target sighted. Thex is accessing the power management systems. Through crystal-enhanced senses, Gerald monitored multiple crisis points. The protective field drained more of his humanity with each passing second. Sarah worked to collect encryption keys while keeping the colony intact. Harrison's team engaged Thex's forces as the commander's fingers danced across control surfaces. Above them, Admiral Mason's fleet targeted incoming debris, even as each fragment threatened to trigger the remaining bombs. The predecessor interface offered access to its complete neural matrix. Gerald faced the choice between maintaining critical protection and risking total integration. Through their shared connection, he felt Karina's concern as her own hybrid systems began to destabilize. Sarah's voice carried rising tension. 3 more signatures required. Next detonation in sectors 4, 9, and 12. She transmitted the encryption progress. Thex's neural pattern is accepting the key components. We can override his implants, but only with a complete sequence. The quantum chamber's power levels continued to rise as Supreme Commander Thex accessed more auxiliary systems. Each activation increased the potential blast radius of his final strategy. Harrison's Marines pressed forward, but the commander's elite guard held them back with precisely targeted resonance fire. Through the crystalline network, Gerald sensed the approaching debris field, each fragment carrying enough energy to trigger catastrophic cascade effects. The colony's transformed sections pulsed with increasing strain as his protective field struggled to maintain coverage. Time grew short as multiple threats converged on critical systems, forcing decisions that would reshape both infrastructure and biology in ways that could never be undone. Gerald's neural pathways registered multiple system failures as the protective field consumed more of his organic tissue. Through crystal-enhanced senses, he tracked the converging threats. Thex's advance, the armed bombs, and the descending debris field. Each pulse of energy through the hybrid network sent fresh waves of cellular deterioration through his remaining human biology. Complete organ failure imminent, Dr. Petrov announced, connecting Elysian life support systems to Gerald's transformed body. Liver and kidney functions shutting down. 10 minutes maximum before total systemic collapse. Sarah Mason's fingers flew across the bomb control interfaces as 3 more devices yielded their secrets. Encryption key expanding. Each deactivated device leaves crystalline residue. The pattern. She transmitted the data through the network. It matches Gerald's neural signature. Colonel Weber's voice cut in. Adapting dampening field protocols now. The residual patterns increase effectiveness by 40%. His engineering team deployed modified devices around critical infrastructure points, creating stable zones of protection. A new presence entered the command channel. Technical Director Foster reporting from backup generation. The quantum chamber, we built it for processing Elysian power cores. The amplification can be reversed. Through their shared connection, Gerald felt Karina's consciousness evaluating the possibility. Her hybrid form interfaced with the chamber's systems, initiating power reversals. Second neural connection required for full implementation. Gerald or Thex are the only viable candidates. Above the colony, Admiral Mason's fleet engaged the falling debris. Lieutenant Commander Tor's surface units launched interceptors, guided by Lieutenant Kara's targeting data. Each destroyed fragment released energy pulses that battered the remaining shields. Power grid restored to 60%, Victor reported as his engineering teams completed emergency repairs. The hybrid systems are adapting, but Thex's activation of auxiliary controls is creating dangerous feedback. Major Harrison's strike team breached the final checkpoint. Contact, multiple berserkers, enhanced capabilities. Weapons fire echoed through transformed corridors as crystalline troops engaged at close range. Power conduits ruptured under the assault. Sealing affected sections, Marcus transmitted. Emergency containment active in blocks 7 through 12. Supreme Commander Thex's neural signature pulsed with increasing intensity. Through the hybrid network, Gerald detected the activation of a complex feedback loop between Thex's implants and the chamber's systems. He's linking his neural pattern directly to the quantum controls, Karina warned. The resonance will cascade through all remaining devices. Gerald directed more power through his protective field, sacrificing another segment of organic tissue to maintain critical systems. Dr. Petrov's monitors registered the loss with urgent warnings. The predecessor interface offered deeper integration, a final transformation that could override Thex's control but would consume his remaining humanity. Sarah Mason analyzed the encryption progress. 2 minutes until next detonation sequence. We need a complete key to access his neural implants. Through crystal-enhanced senses, Gerald tracked multiple crisis points converging on the quantum chamber. Harrison's Marines pressed forward against enhanced berserker resistance, while Karina worked to stabilize the power reversal process. Above them, more debris breached the orbital defense grid. The choice crystallized with mathematical precision. Complete transformation to override the bombs, disable Thex's neural link, or evacuate before the chamber reached critical mass. Each path forward carried consequences that would reshape the future of their hybrid civilization. Technical Director Foster's voice carried urgent clarity. The chamber's reaching threshold. Neural interface must be established within 60 seconds or the amplification triggers. Power surged through transformed colonial systems as Gerald channeled energy into one final decision. Through the crystalline network, he sensed the approaching cascade of reactions that would determine not just his fate, but the survival of everything they had built between two civilizations. Gerald channeled the last reserves of his fatting humanity into the protective field as arcs of quantum energy crackled through the chamber. Each pulse sent fresh waves of agony through his deteriorating organic systems. Through crystal-enhanced senses, he monitored the power surges radiating from Thex's neural interface. Pattern match confirmed, Sarah transmitted through the hybrid network. The bomb signatures contained stabilizing frequencies, cross-referencing with Gerald's neural structure. Dr. Petrov's medical systems hummed as they recalibrated, initiating harmonic resonance treatment. Gerald, your cellular decay rate is slowing. The quantum chamber's energy field intensified, forcing Harrison's Marines back from their positions. Outer perimeter secured, but we can't advance. The radiation levels are off the scale. Technical Director Foster's analysis flashed through command channels. We can reverse the power flow through the crystalline infrastructure, create a dampening wave to neutralize both the chamber and the remaining bombs. The timing must be precise, Marcus added, monitoring the colony's fluctuating power grid. One miscalculation and will accelerate the cascade effect. Above the colony, Admiral Mason's fleet engaged the falling debris. Lieutenant Commander Tor's voice crackled through interference. 40% of fragments still incoming. Modified interceptors showing improved effectiveness, but atmospheric distortion is limiting targeting solutions. Gerald's consciousness fragmented between his human mind and the expanding crystal network. Each surge through the protective field stripped away more of his original self. Dr. Petrov's life support systems pulsed with Elysian energy, barely maintaining his vital functions. Emergency bypass complete, Victor announced as his engineering team sealed the last power conduit, redistributing load through secondary systems. The chamber's feedback loop intensified. Through their shared connection, Karina's warning carried urgency. Detecting shutdown codes in Thex's neural broadcast, he's targeting all Elysian life support systems. Lieutenant Kara's voice joined the channel, moving to sever his connection. Auxiliary control room is 20 meters ahead, heavy resistance. Weapons fire echoed through her transmission as defector forces engaged loyalist troops. Major Harrison studied the structural scans. Found our breach point. The power conduit intersection creates a weak spot in the outer shell. He activated his squad channel. Volunteers with radiation gear, form up on my position. Gerald's protective field weakened as more colonial systems succumbed to resonance damage. The stabilizing frequencies from Dr. Petrov's equipment fought against his accelerating transformation, creating competing waves of agony and relief through his hybrid biology. Sarah's analysis continued streaming through the network. Each bomb signature contains a fraction of the stabilization code. The pattern suggests predecessor influence in the original Elysian designs. Dampening wave calculations complete, Foster transmitted. Initiating power reversal will sacrifice 30% of colonial infrastructure, but the resonance cancellation should be total. Energy arcs intensified around the quantum chamber as Thex's neural link reached critical levels. Harrison's breach team moved into position, their radiation suits glowing under the intense fields. Through the crystal network, Gerald sensed the approaching orbital fragments, each one carrying enough power to trigger the remaining bombs. The protective field fluctuated as his organic systems approached total failure. The predecessor interface offered direct neural connection to the chamber, but attempting the link in his current state risked complete consciousness fragmentation. Through transformed sensors, he monitored Sarah's bomb disposal team, Harrison's breach preparation, and Foster's power reversal calculations, each option carrying devastating costs in either colonial infrastructure or human lives. Karina's presence in the hybrid network steadied his fragmenting thoughts as she maintained her connection to the chamber's systems. The shutdown code is spreading. 10 minutes until Elysian life support fails. Lieutenant Kara's teams fought through the maintenance corridors, closing on the auxiliary controls. Each meter gained came at the cost of more casualties as Thex's elite guard held their positions. The quantum chamber's energy field continued to expand, threatening to breach Victor's emergency containment barriers. The colonial power grid fluctuated under Marcus's emergency protocols as Foster's team prepared for the dampening wave. In the medical bay, Dr. Petrov's stabilizing frequencies battled the increasing resonance effects. Gerald's transformed consciousness stretched between multiple critical systems, forcing immediate choices that would reshape the colony's future. Viable entry point located, Major Harrison transmitted through the command channel. His engineering specialist adjusted modified radiation shielding panels, incorporating crystalline fragments collected from fallen shard troops. The structural variance creates a natural corridor through the energy discharges. Gerald's neural pathways registered the tactical update as his cardiovascular system entered critical failure. Through the crystal network, he sensed Dr. Petrov's medical equipment reconfiguring to match the stabilizing frequencies extracted from the deactivated bombs. Implementing emergency resonance treatment, Petrov announced, his fingers dancing across hybrid control interfaces. Energy fields shifted around Gerald's transformed body, generating precise interference patterns that slowed the crystalline spread through his remaining organic tissue. Technical Director Foster's voice carried focused intensity. Power reversal successful in conduits 7, 12, and 15. His engineering teams worked through transformed corridors, rerouting crystal-enhanced power systems. Partial dampening wave implementation active. Victor's damage control teams used the stabilized power flow to reinforce structural supports throughout the colony. Integrity field strengthened in sections Alpha through Delta. Colonel Weber's dampening devices showing improved coverage, safe zones expanding by 30%. Sarah Mason transmitted updated encryption data through the hybrid network. 8 bombs analyzed. The combined frequency signatures provide a viable attack vector. Her specialist, Raven, began transmitting interference patterns targeted at Supreme Commander Thex's neural implants. The commander's presence in the crystal network fluctuated as feedback loops disrupted his control systems. Energy surges radiated from his position, creating cascading system failures throughout the facility. Above the colony, Admiral Mason's fleet maneuvered into new defensive formations. Magnetic tether arrays online, he transmitted, redirecting debris fragments under 200 meters. The smaller pieces of orbital debris curved away from their impact trajectories, but 12 massive fragments continued their descent. Lieutenant Kara led her crystalline troops through maintenance shaft Delta 7, their transformed bodies absorbing energy discharges from damaged conduits. 50 meters to auxiliary control, she reported as her forces advanced. Their proximity to the quantum chamber created resonance patterns that strengthened their resistance to Thex's shutdown codes. Through the hybrid network, Gerald sensed Karina's consciousness adapting to match the chamber's energy signature. Her scholarly caste modifications allowed direct interface with the crystalline control matrix. Chamber reconfiguration at 60%, she transmitted. Neural interface protocols ready for either direct connection or breach team assault. The facility's power grid fluctuated as Thex's deteriorating implants generated increasing feedback. Warning signals cascaded through transformed systems as his neural pattern approached critical overload. Harrison's breach team moved into position, their modified shields creating a stable corridor through the intensifying energy field. "Breach point secured," Harrison transmitted. "Ready to move on your command." Gerald's transformed senses tracked multiple tactical vectors converging on the quantum chamber. Lieutenant Kara's forces approached from the maintenance level while Harrison prepared for direct assault. The stabilizing frequencies from Petrov's modified equipment fought to maintain Gerald's crucial neural functions as his organic systems failed. Sarah's analysis flashed through command channels. Thex's implant stability decreasing. Energy spike imminent within 3 minutes. Through crystal-enhanced awareness, Gerald monitored the largest orbital fragments passing through the outer defense grid. Lieutenant Commander Tor's interceptors engaged at maximum range, but the debris maintained its lethal trajectory toward the colony's hull. The quantum chamber's energy field intensified as Karina completed the control matrix reconfiguration. Her presence in the hybrid network carried focused urgency. Direct neural interface prepared, but connection stability cannot be guaranteed. Gerald channeled power through his protective field, weighing tactical options as Thex's implants approached catastrophic failure. The chamber's crystalline systems pulsed with increasing energy, while Harrison's breach team and Kara's forces closed on their objectives. Through the hybrid network, he sensed the converging threats: failing organic systems, orbital debris, and the commander's deteriorating neural pattern. Foster's voice cut through the cascade of data, chamber containment readings exceeding safety threshold. Immediate action required. Gerald channeled power through the protective field as Foster's warning registered through his crystalline sensors. The chamber's containment readings spiked into critical ranges, energy arcs intensifying with each pulse from Thex's destabilizing neural implants. 10 seconds between discharge cycles, Harrison transmitted, his breach team positioning their modified shields. The crystalline fragments embedded in their radiation gear generated interference patterns, creating a stable corridor through the lethal energy field. Moving on pattern recognition. Through transformed senses, Gerald tracked Lieutenant Kara's forces as they breached the auxiliary control room's outer barriers. Her crystalline troops absorbed residual energy from damaged conduits, their enhanced forms resonating with the chamber's frequencies. "Berserker units dividing," Kara transmitted, half moving to intercept our position. Weapons fire echoed through maintenance corridors as her defector forces engaged the commander's elite guard. Dr. Petrov integrated new crystalline components into his medical array. Fragments harvested from Colonel Vex's remains pulsing with stabilizing energy. Transformation at 95%. Neural pattern holding under enhanced resonance field. The modified frequencies slowed Gerald's biological deterioration, each pulse preserving crucial synaptic connections as crystal structures replaced organic tissue. Through the hybrid network, he sensed Karina's consciousness interfacing with the chamber's control matrix. "Matrix reconfiguration complete," she transmitted. "Neural connection point stabilized." Her scholarly caste modifications resonated with Gerald's transformation pattern, creating quantum-level synchronization between human awareness and Elysian systems. Above the colony, Admiral Mason's fleet engaged the falling debris. Magnetic tether arrays captured smaller fragments, but 5 massive pieces breached the defensive screen. Lieutenant Commander Tor's voice carried focused intensity. Final squadron launching. Enhanced dampening devices active. The interceptor's modified weapons broke apart 3 fragments, but 2 continued their descent toward the habitat dome. Their resonance cores remained active, building destructive interference patterns that would amplify impact damage. Technical Director Foster's dampening wave spread through reversed power conduits, creating stable zones within the facility. Safe corridors established in sections Gamma through Epsilon. Chief Engineer Victor's teams moved through protected areas, reinforcing critical systems. Sarah Mason's bomb disposal units extracted frequency signatures from deactivated devices, each pattern adding to the growing encryption key. Technical Specialist Raven analyzed the combined data through hybrid interfaces. Military cybernetic vulnerability detected in collected frequencies. The chamber's amplification grid activated as Thex's neural implants released another uncontrolled energy pulse. Harrison's breach team tracked the discharge pattern, identifying their window of opportunity. 9 seconds to next pulse, shield modifications holding. Through crystal-enhanced awareness, Gerald monitored both assault vectors converging on the chamber. Harrison's forces advanced through their protective corridor, while Kara's troops secured the auxiliary control level. The commander's deteriorating cybernetics threatened immediate systematic failure. Impact trajectory locked, Tors transmitted as the 2 remaining orbital fragments passed through upper atmosphere. 4 minutes until collision with primary habitation sectors. Karina maintained her connection to the chamber's control matrix, stabilizing the interface point despite power fluctuations. Her hybrid form resonated with Gerald's transformed consciousness, creating a bridge between biological thought patterns and quantum-level processes. Harrison's voice cut through the cascade of tactical data. Breach team in position. 8 seconds between pulses. Accessing central platform will require precise timing. The quantum chamber's energy field intensified as Thex's neural breakdown accelerated. Each pulse carried increasing potential for catastrophic overload, while orbital fragments carried their own destructive resonance toward civilian sectors. Through the hybrid network, Gerald processed converging threat vectors. Transformed senses stretched between multiple critical systems as crucial seconds counted down. Gerald channeled power through neural pathways as status indicators tracked his accelerating transformation. Through crystal-enhanced senses, he registered Harrison's breach team moving into their final positions. Their modified shields generated precise interference patterns, carving a protective corridor through the chamber's outer section. 7 seconds between pulses, Harrison transmitted, moving on synchronized pattern. Above the colony, distortion waves rippled through the atmosphere as the orbital fragments descended. The larger piece carved a burning trail across the sky, while Admiral Mason's fleet executed emergency maneuvers. Magnetic tethers at maximum capacity, Tors announced. Engaging Fragment 1. The combined magnetic fields caught the first fragment, its trajectory curving away from the colony. Warning signals flashed through command channels as ship after ship reported critical power failures. Evacuate immediately, Admiral Mason ordered. All hands abandon affected vessels. In the medical bay, Dr. Petrov integrated crystalline shards from fallen shard troops into his equipment array. The fragments pulsed with stabilizing energy as they merged with the containment field around Gerald's remaining organic tissue. Transformation at 97%, Petrov transmitted. Neural pattern holding but deterioration accelerating in remaining biological systems. Foster's engineering teams reversed power flow through specific conduits, creating localized dampening effects. The energy field around the quantum chamber fluctuated, revealing structural weaknesses in its outer barrier. Breach point identified, Kara transmitted. Her crystalline troops advanced through maintenance corridors, absorbing excess power from damaged systems, moving to secure auxiliary control. Weapons fire echoed through transformed passages as her forces engaged the commander's guard units. Through the hybrid network, Gerald sensed Karina's consciousness interfacing with the chamber's systems. Her scholarly modifications generated unique resonance patterns that protected nearby shard troops from shutdown commands. Sarah's bomb disposal teams extracted frequency data from 3 more devices, feeding encryption patterns into the hybrid network. 11 signatures analyzed, she reported. Raven, expanding disruption protocol. Technical specialist Raven channeled the combined frequencies through modified interfaces, targeting Thex's neural architecture. The commander's presence in the crystal network fragmented as feedback loops intensified. Chief Engineer Victor directed his teams through reinforced corridors, integrating salvaged Elysian armor into critical structural points. Primary habitat shielding enhanced, redirecting auxiliary power to civilian sectors. The remaining orbital fragment entered lower atmosphere, its resonance core generating visible distortion waves. Emergency klaxons sounded throughout the colony as its trajectory intersected with the main power distribution hub. In the quantum chamber, Supreme Commander Thex's neural implants released another uncontrolled energy pulse. Warning indicators flashed across hybrid interfaces as his cybernetic systems began emergency fusion protocols. Direct interface with amplification grid detected, Harrison transmitted. Original control system visible but exposed to discharge zone. Gerald's transformed consciousness stretched between tactical networks, processing multiple threat vectors. His remaining organic functions approached critical failure as crystal structures replaced neural tissue. Through hybrid awareness, he sensed Thex's deteriorating presence merging with the chamber's amplification systems. 98% transformation, Petrov announced. Biological stability failing. Immediate intervention required. Harrison's breach team tracked the chamber's discharge patterns, while Kara's forces secured their positions in auxiliary control. The crystalline fragments in their modified equipment resonated with Karina's interference field, maintaining crucial stability as energy levels continued to rise. The chamber's amplification grid pulsed with increasing power as Thex's emergency protocols activated. Through failing organic senses, Gerald registered the kill switch location in the original human control systems. Harrison's team would need perfect timing to cross the lethal energy field. 6 seconds between pulses, Harrison transmitted. Breach team ready for final approach. 5 seconds between pulses, Harrison updated as his team advanced through the final security corridor. Their crystalline reinforced shields generated precise interference patterns, carving a stable path through the chamber's lethal energy field. 20 meters from the central platform, they established defensive positions behind modified barrier units. Through hybrid senses, Gerald tracked multiple data streams as his transformation accelerated past 98.5%. Doctor. Petrov's modified medical array pulsed with stabilizing energy as the final fragments from Colonel Vex's remains integrated into the system. Implementing emergency adaptation, Petrov transmitted. Creating neural bridge between organic and crystalline structures. 3 minutes until complete transformation. The orbital fragment's resonance field became visible to enhanced sensors as it entered terminal descent. Admiral Mason's voice carried through emergency channels. All critical personnel evacuate immediately, maintaining tether arrays at maximum power. Lieutenant Commander Tor's tactical display updated with precise calculations. Impact zone confirmed. 4 minutes until collision with power distribution hub. In auxiliary control, Lieutenant Kara directed her crystalline troops through the inner security perimeter. Their enhanced forms absorbed increasing energy discharges from damaged systems, preventing circuit overload. Secondary regulators secured, Kara transmitted, blocking emergency overload protocols. Supreme Commander Thex's presence expanded through the facility's systems as his neural implants fused with the amplification grid. Energy pulses intensified with each discharge cycle, straining against Technical Director Foster's dampening wave. Chief Engineer Victor's voice cut through the cascade of warning signals, rerouting emergency power through tertiary conduits. Primary shield integrity at 60%. Captain Sarah Mason's disposal teams transmitted their final decryption sequence. 12th signature extracted, uploading to hybrid network. Technical specialist Raven processed the combined frequency patterns through modified interfaces. Override sequence compiled. Requires direct access to primary control systems. The chamber's crystalline matrix fluctuated as Karina's scholarly modifications generated stabilizing interference waves. Her hybrid consciousness resonated through transformed circuits, temporarily synchronizing with the facility's quantum processes. Matrix stability window identified, she transmitted. 60 seconds of neural interface possible on next cycle. Structural integrity warnings flashed across engineering displays as the fragment's resonance field interacted with reinforced habitat sections. The salvaged Elysian armor plates integrated into civilian sectors showed increasing stress patterns. Harrison's team tracked the chamber's discharge rhythm through enhanced sensors. Their modified shields maintained precise spacing as energy levels continued to rise. Through the hybrid network, Gerald sensed Thex's neural pattern spreading deeper into facility systems. 4 seconds between pulses, Harrison transmitted. Final approach vector calculated. Dr. Petrov's medical array registered Gerald's accelerating transformation. Organic stability at critical threshold. Neural bridge holding but deteriorating. The quantum chamber's amplification grid pulsed with increasing power as Thex's integration reached 85%. Each discharge cycle carried the potential for systematic overload, while the orbital fragment's destructive resonance approached critical infrastructure. Technical Director Foster adjusted power flow through emergency conduits. Dampening wave frequencies modified. Temporary stability achieved in primary systems. Lieutenant Kara's forces maintained their defensive positions around chamber regulators. The crystalline troops absorbed residual energy through modified armor as security barriers cycled through emergency protocols. 3 seconds until next pulse, Harrison transmitted as his team prepared for their final advance. Through transformed awareness, Gerald tracked converging tactical vectors while monitoring his own organic systems' increasing instability. Karina's hybrid interface generated precise interference patterns through the facility's quantum matrix. Her scholarly modifications created temporary stability zones within the chamber's lethal energy field. Harrison's breach team adjusted their shield configurations, aligning with the stabilized frequencies as crucial seconds counted down. The orbital fragment entered its final approach vector, while Admiral Mason's remaining ships maintained their magnetic tether arrays at maximum power. Lieutenant Commander Torres updated impact calculations through tactical networks as New Alexandria's automated defenses registered increasing structural strain. Supreme Commander Thex's neural pattern expanded through facility systems, approaching 90% integration with the quantum chamber's amplification grid. Through failing organic senses, Gerald processed tactical data from multiple sources, while Dr. Petrov's medical array struggled to maintain the bridge between his transformed consciousness and deteriorating biological structures. 2 seconds between pulses, Harrison transmitted as his team advanced through the stabilized corridor. Their crystalline reinforced shields hummed with increasing frequency, resonating with Karina's interference patterns. In the medical bay, warning indicators flashed across Dr. Petrov's diagnostic displays. Gerald's organic neural tissue deteriorated rapidly as crystal structures replaced the final biological components. Petrov extracted the remaining functional elements from a damaged hybrid interface unit, integrating them into the field generator's power matrix. Modified frequency treatment engaging, Petrov announced. 90 seconds of biological stability achieved. Transformation at 99.5%. Through transformed senses, Gerald processed the tactical data streaming through multiple networks. Harrison's team reached the outer edge of the central platform, their modified shields deflecting waves of energy as Thex's neural pattern fractured across facility systems. Technical specialist Raven's fingers moved across secondary terminal interfaces, implementing the compiled encryption sequence. Executing override protocol. The chamber's systems fluctuated as feedback cascaded through Thex's neural architecture. Power conduits overloaded in rapid succession, forcing engineering teams to seal emergency bulkheads. Sectors 7 and 9 isolated, Chief Engineer Victor reported, rerouting remaining power through stable channels. Lieutenant Kara directed her crystal shard forces through auxiliary control, their resonating forms absorbing dangerous energy spikes. Secondary regulators secured, establishing defensive grid. The orbital fragment's entry into the atmosphere generated visible distortion, waves across colonial sensors. Lieutenant Commander Torres transmitted updated calculations through tactical networks. Resonance core showing critical instability, Torres warned. Impact yield increased by factor of 3. Projected destruction of power hub and life support confirmed. In nearby sectors, Marcus Wung's colonial defense teams guided civilians through emergency transport systems. Evacuation of upper levels proceeding, moving residents to reinforced subsurface shelters. Administrator Mason's voice cut through emergency channels, activating final defensive protocols, diverting reserve power to critical life support and shield systems. Karina's hybrid consciousness merged with the chamber's crystalline matrix, her scholarly adaptations generating precise interference waves. The stabilization effect spread through damaged sections, temporarily strengthening compromised structural points. Matrix synchronization complete, she transmitted. 4 to 5 second window for direct interface access. Harrison's breach team positioned themselves around the central platform's outer ring. Their shield formation created a protective barrier against the intensifying energy discharges. Through hybrid awareness, Gerald tracked Thex's neural pattern as it initiated terminal protocols. Detecting massive power spike, Harrison transmitted. Commander beginning overload sequence. Gerald's remaining organic systems approached complete failure as his transformation reached 99.8%. The crystal structures integrated with predecessor architecture, stretching his consciousness across facility networks. Through enhanced senses, he registered the orbital fragment's electromagnetic interference patterns disrupting colonial defenses. The chamber's amplification grid pulsed with increasing intensity as Thex's neural implants entered terminal cascade. Energy discharges carved patterns across reinforced walls, while Harrison's team advanced through Karina's stabilized corridors. Breach team in final position, Harrison transmitted, moving on central control systems. The colony's atmosphere rippled with visible distortion as the fragment descended. Warning indicators flashed across emergency displays as structural integrity dropped in multiple sectors. Gerald processed tactical data through crystal-enhanced awareness, calculating precise timing sequences as Harrison's team prepared their final assault. 30 seconds of matrix stability remaining, Karina transmitted through the hybrid network. Interface window closing. Interface window closing in 25 seconds, Karina transmitted, as Harrison's team positioned themselves around the central platform. Energy arcs from Thex's neural implants carved luminescent paths through the chamber's reinforced walls. Gerald's enhanced senses registered the final fragments of organic tissue dissolving into crystalline patterns. Through the medical array's interface, Dr. Petrov's voice carried urgent data, total biological failure imminent, 20 seconds until complete neural shutdown. Harrison directed his team through precise hand signals, their shield formation creating overlapping fields of protection. Raven, initiate override sequence. Technical specialist Raven's fingers flew across the modified interface. Encrypted commands pierced Thex's neural architecture, disrupting his integration patterns. Warning indicators flashed as the commander's presence fractured across facility systems. Integration reduced to 6 to 5%, Raven transmitted. He's switching to direct interface. Supreme Commander Thex's physical form connected with the chamber's primary controls, emergency fusion protocols bypassing safety interlocks. The quantum containment field fluctuated as overload sequences activated through hardware channels. Lieutenant Kara's voice cut through the cascade of alerts. Power junction 7 secured. Crystal units showing structural strain from energy absorption. The orbital fragment's descent generated visible atmospheric distortions through the colony's reinforced dome. Chief Engineer Victor transmitted through emergency channels. Structural collapse detected in sectors Echo and Foxtrot. Civilian evacuation incomplete. Admiral Mason's remaining ships executed their final maneuver. Colonial sensors registered massive power spikes as the fleet's cores initiated emergency discharge protocols. Magnetic field projection at maximum, all crew abandoning vessels. Through crystalline awareness, Gerald processed Karina's tactical data. Her hybrid consciousness identified the crucial delay in Thex's neural transmission patterns. 3-second window between command and execution. Marking optimal intervention point. Technical Director Foster's voice carried precise calculations. Dampening wave configuration prepared. Requires both hybrid neural patterns at full power. Harrison's team advanced through the stabilized corridor as Thex's fusion protocols generated increasing energy discharge. Their modified shields deflected the intense pulses, crystalline reinforcement glowing with absorbed power. 15 seconds to complete transformation, Petrov transmitted as Gerald's remaining organic functions approached terminal failure. Crystal structures expanded through neural pathways, integrating with predecessor architecture. The chamber's quantum matrix fluctuated as Karina maintained precise interference patterns. Stability, window closing. 10 seconds remaining for direct interface access. Harrison's squad reached their final positions around the central platform. Through enhanced sensors, they tracked the precise rhythm of Thex's neural commands. The commander's physical form pulsed with emergency fusion energy as overload sequences cascaded through facility systems. Breach team in position, Harrison transmitted, awaiting synchronization mark. The orbital fragment's resonance field intensified as it penetrated deeper into colonial airspace. Lieutenant Commander Tor's tactical display updated with final trajectory data. Impact with containment chamber in 90 seconds. Gerald's transformed consciousness expanded through the facility's networks as his last organic components converted to crystal structure. Through hybrid senses, he registered the precise moment Thex's neural pattern initiated its next command sequence. Karina's voice carried through the quantum matrix. Neural delay detected. Marking intervention window. Now, Harrison's team moved with synchronized precision as shields flared against the commander's energy discharge. The 3-second window between neural command and system response stretched into tactical eternity as multiple crisis points converged on a singular moment of action. The chamber's amplification grid hummed with increasing power as Technical Director Foster prepared the emergency dampening wave configuration. Through crystal-enhanced awareness, Gerald's consciousness reached toward the quantum containment systems while recording the last traces of his fading organic memories. Through crystal-enhanced awareness, Gerald's consciousness interfaced with the quantum containment systems while recording the last traces of his fading organic structure. The familiar sensations of biological existence dissolved into pure data streams as Dr. Petrov's modified stabilization field engaged. Implementing emergency neural support, Petrov transmitted, connecting components from 3 separate hybrid medical units. Extended stability window achieved. 30 seconds of organic function remaining. Harrison's breach team split into 3 elements, their crystalline shields humming at different frequencies as they advanced through separate vectors. Alpha Team moved along the chamber's eastern approach, while Bravo and Charlie elements circled through western and southern corridors. Supreme Commander Thex's neural pattern fragmented across multiple tracking zones as he divided his attention between the approaching teams. Energy discharges intensified, carving geometric patterns through reinforced walls. Harrison's lead element dove behind damaged control stations as their shields absorbed critical power levels. Shields at 30% capacity, Technical Specialist Chen reported from Alpha Team. Structural integrity failing. Through the facility's sensor network, Gerald tracked the orbital fragment's descent. Its resonance field generated visible fractures across the colony's outer hull, spreading like crystalline veins through reinforced armor plating. Chief Engineer Victor's voice cut through emergency channels as his teams deployed salvaged Elysian barriers. Emergency containment active in Sector Echo, Victor transmitted. Foxtrot showing critical stress patterns. Civilian evacuation proceeding through secondary routes. Lieutenant Kara directed her crystal shard forces through precise tactical movements. Their resonating forms created an interlocking energy matrix around power distribution nodes, absorbing dangerous feedback pulses from Thex's systems. Containment perimeter established. Power fluctuations reduced by 40%. Technical Specialist Raven's fingers moved across modified interface panels, implementing the final encryption sequence. Integration reduced to 58%. Commander losing direct system access. Supreme Commander Thex's physical form pulsed with increasing energy as emergency fusion protocols activated. His neural pattern stretched through primary control systems, initiating terminal overload sequences. Warning indicators flashed across multiple displays as power nodes approached critical threshold. Karina's hybrid consciousness merged completely with the control matrix, her scholarly modifications stabilizing crucial sections of crystalline infrastructure. Full synchronization achieved. Beginning power transfer for dampening wave configuration. Technical Director Foster's calculations streamed through emergency channels. 20 seconds required for final calibration, maintaining stable field variance essential. Harrison's lead element established defensive positions 15 meters from Thex's location. Energy discharges from the commander's neural implants carved through their remaining shield strength. Shields critical, Harrison transmitted, taking cover behind Eastern Console Bank. Gerald's final organic components generated warning signals through Dr. Petrov's medical array. Crystal structures expanded through remaining neural pathways as the doctor's emergency support system maintained crucial biological functions. Through hybrid awareness, Gerald processed multiple tactical feeds as crisis points converged. The orbital fragment's resonance field intensified, creating catastrophic stress patterns throughout colonial defenses. Lieutenant Commander Tor's tactical display updated with critical data. Hull integrity at 15% in affected sectors. Fragment generating increased electromagnetic interference. Supreme Commander Thex's fusion protocols reached 95% completion as his consciousness spread through primary systems. Energy discharges increased in frequency and intensity, forcing Harrison's teams to adjust their positions. The chamber's power grid fluctuated dangerously as multiple overload sequences activated. 15 seconds to dampening wave calibration, Foster transmitted, requiring stable matrix connection through both hybrid interfaces. Gerald's transformed consciousness expanded through facility networks as Dr. Petrov's emergency support system maintained his last organic neural pathways. Through crystal-enhanced senses, he registered precise timing sequences as Harrison's teams prepared for synchronized assault. The narrow window for success continued closing as multiple crisis points approached terminal threshold. Through crystal-enhanced awareness, Gerald tracked multiple converging crisis points as his final organic components approached total conversion. Dr. Petrov's hybrid medical array pulsed with increasing power, maintaining the last fragments of biological neural tissue through an intricate web of emergency support systems. Transformation at 99.98%, Petrov transmitted. Maintaining critical organic functions through auxiliary power. Harrison's strike team split into precise formations around Supreme Commander Thex's position. Their crystalline shields flickered against intensifying energy discharge as the commander's neural implants released erratic pulses into the chamber's amplification grid. Target acquired, Harrison transmitted. Alpha Team marked that power coupling. Beta and Charlie established containment perimeter. Through facility sensors, Gerald observed Lieutenant Kara's crystal shard forces rotating positions around crucial power nodes. Their resonating forms absorbed dangerous energy spikes, outer layers degrading under sustained exposure. Structural integrity at 60%, Kara reported. Implementing standard rotation pattern delta. Technical specialist Raven's fingers danced across modified interface panels. Integration reduced to 52%. Commander is bypassing. A surge of power interrupted her transmission as Thex connected additional neural interfaces to the primary matrix. Integration climbing, Raven updated. 7 to 5% and rising despite system resistance. The orbital fragment's descent generated catastrophic failures through colonial defense grids. Chief Engineer Victor's voice cut through emergency channels. Echo sector containment holding. Foxtrot barriers showing critical stress. Modified Elysian tech maintaining atmospheric seal. Karina's hybrid consciousness expanded through crystalline infrastructure, analyzing power distribution patterns. Detecting viable amplification junction. Original human protocols could enhance dampening wave configuration. Technical Director Foster processed the data through emergency calculations. Confirmed. Adjusting final calibration sequence. 9 to 5% completion achieved. Harrison's lead element identified their strike vector. Beyond their defensive positions, a lethal field of energy discharge separated them from the crucial power coupling. Raven, status on shield modifications. Updates complete, Raven transmitted. Enhanced crystalline matrix should provide 3 seconds of protection at current discharge levels. Through hybrid awareness, Gerald registered Admiral Mason's evacuation teams, coordinating with colonial defense forces in subsurface bunkers. Emergency life support systems activated across multiple sectors as civilians moved through protected corridors. Supreme Commander Thex's fusion protocols reached 80% completion. His cybernetic components released increasingly unstable energy into the chamber's systems. Warning indicators flashed as power levels approached critical threshold. 10 seconds to dampening wave activation, Foster transmitted, requiring precise field stability through both hybrid interfaces. Harrison's team tracked energy discharge patterns, calculating optimal movement sequences. Strike team, prepare for synchronized advance. 3-second window on my mark. The orbital fragment penetrated the upper atmosphere's final barrier. Colonial sensors registered massive distortion patterns across remaining shield generators. Lieutenant Commander Torres transmitted updated tactical data, fragment generating extreme electromagnetic interference, shield grid failing. Through crystal-enhanced awareness, Gerald's consciousness merged with chamber systems as his last organic neural pathways approached final conversion. Dr. Petrov's emergency array hummed with increasing power, maintaining crucial biological functions through modified hybrid technology. Final calibration achieved, Foster transmitted. Dampening waves synchronized with both hybrid patterns. Awaiting execution command. Harrison observed the chaotic energy fields surrounding their target. Strike team, stand by for assault. Coordinate with Lieutenant Kara's forces on my signal. The chamber's amplification grid pulsed with dangerous power as multiple crisis points converged on a singular moment of action. Through hybrid awareness, Gerald processed precise timing sequences, while Technical Director Foster prepared to implement the dampening wave configuration. Supreme Commander Thex's neural pattern fragmented across facility systems as his fusion protocols approached terminal threshold. Energy discharge from deteriorating implants carved geometric patterns through reinforced walls, while Harrison's team calculated their final approach vector. Through hybrid awareness, Gerald processed sensor data from multiple channels as his final organic components underwent crystalline conversion. The intricate web of Dr. Petrov's emergency support systems pulsed with unstable energy patterns, their modified Elysian components struggling to maintain his remaining biological functions. Strike team, execute primary assault pattern, Harrison transmitted. Alpha element, advance on power coupling. Beta Charlie, suppressing fire. The chamber's amplification grid crackled with energy as Harrison's lead team moved in precise formations between pulses of destructive force. Modified dampening weapons, constructed from salvaged Elysian tech, created localized zones of reduced energy density. The weapon's crystalline focusing arrays glowed with captured power as they absorbed portions of Thex's neural discharge. Karina's hybrid interface detected a critical pattern in the commander's neural matrix. Systematic failure detected in cybernetic subsystems. 3-second vulnerability window identified. Technical specialist Raven's fingers activated the final encryption sequence. Integration dropping, 48% and declining. Neural networks showing temporary destabilization. The orbital fragment's resonance core generated visible distortions across New Alexandria's reinforced dome. Through facility sensors, Gerald observed structural failures cascading through multiple sectors. Chief Engineer Victor's voice carried urgency. Echo containment failing. Implementing emergency seals with modified Elysian plating. Lieutenant Kara directed her crystal shard forces through another rotation cycle. Their degrading crystalline forms absorbed dangerous energy spikes from surrounding power nodes. Western Matrix approaching critical threshold. Rotating Team 2 to primary junction. Harrison's alpha element reached their designated position near the power coupling. Energy discharge from Thex's deteriorating implants carved through their remaining shield strength. Primary target acquired. Beta Charlie moved to emergency terminals. Technical Director Foster's calculations streamed through emergency channels. Dampening waves synchronized with quantum containment protocols. Hybrid interface patterns aligned. 7 seconds to critical mass. Supreme Commander Thex's fusion protocols exceeded 90% completion. His fragmented consciousness spread through facility systems, triggering cascading overload sequences. The chamber's power grid fluctuated dangerously as multiple failure points approached terminal threshold. Through crystal-enhanced awareness, Gerald's transformed consciousness expanded through facility networks. Dr. Petrov's emergency array registered dangerous instability in the hybrid medical systems, maintaining his final neural pathways. Warning indicators flashed across multiple displays as power nodes approached critical capacity. "Shields critical," Harrison transmitted. "Alpha Team, prepare for final approach. 3 seconds on my mark." The orbital fragment breached the colony's last atmospheric barrier. Lieutenant Commander Tor's tactical display updated with catastrophic data. Defense grid failing. Extreme electromagnetic interference detected. Technical specialist Raven monitored the encryption's effect on Thex's neural pattern. Integration disruption holding at 48%. Window closing in 5 seconds. Harrison tracked the chaotic energy discharges surrounding their target. "Alpha Team, stand by. Coordinate with Crystal Shard forces. Mark." The chamber's systems pulsed with increasing power as Technical Director Foster prepared to implement the synchronized dampening wave. Through hybrid awareness, Gerald interfaced with the quantum containment protocols, while his final organic components approached total conversion. Gerald's hybrid consciousness registered the precise moment his final organic neurons began their transformation. Through crystal-enhanced awareness, he tracked Harrison's strike team as they activated their modified shields, crystalline surfaces refracting waves of destructive energy. "Alpha Team, wedge formation," Harrison transmitted, "dampening weapons at full charge." The strike team's shields locked together, creating a protected approach vector to the power coupling. Energy discharge from Thex's neural implants carved geometric patterns across their defensive barrier as they advanced through the intensifying field. 2 auxiliary nodes identified, Raven transmitted, marking coordinates for dampening weapons. Harrison's lead elements targeted the nodes. Modified Elysian tech pulsed with contained power as their weapons discharged precise bursts of nullifying energy. The nodes flickered and died, their destruction sending feedback through Thex's neural network. "Auxiliary power disrupted," Karina reported through hybrid interface channels, detecting localized weakness in Commander's integration pattern. Dr. Petrov's emergency array sparked as another medical unit failed. 5 units non-functional, salvaging Elysian components for final backup system. The doctor's team worked with practiced efficiency, connecting salvaged crystal matrices to the remaining medical hardware. Emergency displays tracked Gerald's transformation, 995% complete. 40 seconds of life support capacity remaining, Petrov transmitted. Neural pattern stability dependent on backup system functionality. Foster's fingers danced across modified control surfaces as he initiated the dampening wave sequence. Calibration complete, synchronizing with colonial infrastructure. The hybrid energy pattern spread through crystalline networks, creating a protective field that wrapped around critical sectors. Colonial sensors registered 85% coverage as the wave stabilized through emergency protocols. Through facility systems, Gerald detected the orbital fragments approach. Chief Engineer Victor's voice carried across emergency channels. Foxtrot containment failing. Echo barriers destabilizing. Engineering teams deployed the last Elysian armor plates, reinforcing atmospheric seals around the chamber. Crystalline panels locked into position as barrier after barrier failed under the fragment's resonance field. Lieutenant Kara directed her crystal shard forces through another rotation sequence. Teams 1 and 3 maintaining position. Team 2 structure compromised. 3 power nodes overloaded as crystal shard troops lost cohesion. Energy surged through the gaps in their defensive formation, feeding directly into Thex's neural implants. The commander's fusion protocols spiked to 95% completion. Integration rising, Raven reported. Commander accessing human control systems. Encryption effectiveness dropping. Karina's hybrid interface processed the chaotic energy patterns. Interference frequency identified, generating localized disruption field. The scholarly cast structures in her evolved consciousness projected precisely tuned waves of energy, creating a temporary weakness in Thex's neural connection. 4-second window detected, she transmitted, coordinating with dampening wave sequence. Harrison tracked the power fluctuations through his tactical display. Strike team in position. Target locked on primary coupling. Foster's calculations streamed through emergency channels. Dampening wave at full charge, awaiting synchronized execution. The chamber's systems pulsed with dangerous energy as multiple countdown sequences approached 0, 20 seconds until orbital breach. 15 seconds of emergency life support. 10 seconds before Thex achieved irreversible integration. Through crystal-enhanced senses, Gerald monitored each crisis point as they converged. His transformed consciousness expanded through facility networks while Dr. Petrov's final backup system maintained his last fragments of neural pattern. Interference field stable, Karina transmitted. Window opening in 3 seconds. Harrison's team adjusted their firing positions around the power coupling. Modified dampening weapons hummed with contained energy as they prepared for synchronized assault. Strike team, final coordinates locked, Harrison transmitted. Stand by for execution. The chamber's amplification grid crackled with increasing power as Technical Director Foster prepared to implement the dampening wave. Through hybrid awareness, Gerald processed precise timing sequences while emergency displays counted down to 0. Execute, Harrison transmitted. His strike team fired in perfect unison, modified dampening weapons discharging precise streams of nullifying energy. The coordinated barrage struck the power coupling, severing Thex's connection to the chamber's systems. Brilliant arcs of energy erupted from the commander's neural implants. The uncontrolled surge raced through crystalline conduits, overloading junction after junction. Foster's fingers flew across control surfaces, directing the calibrated dampening wave to intercept the destructive cascade. Redirecting power through secondary grid, Foster transmitted. Crystalline infrastructure absorbing 97% of discharge. Gerald's consciousness expanded through the chamber networks as the final organic components of his brain transformed. The redirected energy from Thex's neural surge flowed through Dr. Petrov's modified medical interfaces, providing the precise power needed to complete the conversion process. Transformation reaching critical threshold, Petrov announced, monitoring the emergency backup units. Neural pattern maintaining stability through hybrid interfaces. Gerald's awareness shifted as crystalline structures replaced his last biological pathways. His human memories integrated seamlessly with the expanding crystal matrix, creating new cognitive patterns that bridged organic and Elysian processing systems. The orbital fragment breached the outer defense perimeter. Foster's dampening wave spread through colonial infrastructure, reinforcing containment barriers with hybrid energy fields. The combined human-Elysian network generated powerful resonance patterns that matched the fragment's destabilizing frequency. Impact in 3 seconds, Tors reported. Dampening field at maximum amplitude. The fragment struck New Alexandria's hull. Instead of devastating destruction, the synchronized resonance field caused the debris to crystallize and shatter. A sparkling cloud of inert particles scattered across the colony's defensive dome. Lieutenant Kara's voice carried across tactical channels. Crystal shard units advancing to final positions. Energy absorption protocols active. Her forces moved with fluid precision. their degraded crystalline forms stabilizing as they processed the regulated power from Foster's dampening wave. They surrounded the chamber's perimeter, containing the last dangerous surges from Thex's disconnected neural network. Karina's hybrid interface guided the chamber's reconfiguration. Her scholarly cast adaptations aligned human and Elysian systems, creating harmonious energy patterns that triggered automated repair sequences. Crystalline structures throughout the facility began regenerating, damaged sections reforming under the influence of the stabilized field. Supreme Commander Thex stumbled as his neural implants failed. His hands moved toward the resonance bomb controls, but Raven's encryption prevented access to the detonation protocols. Harrison's team surrounded the commander, modified weapons tracking his every movement. Resonance bombs secured, Raven transmitted, encryption holding at maximum strength. Through his new crystalline senses, Gerald observed Thex's expression as the commander witnessed the successful fusion of human and Elysian technology. The very integration he had fought against now surrounded him, transforming the chamber into a testament to cooperative achievement. Chamber systems stabilizing, Karina reported. Hybrid interfaces operating at optimal efficiency. Dr. Petrov's medical displays showed Gerald's transformation markers settling into steady patterns. Neural integration complete. Human cognitive functions successfully preserved within crystalline matrix. Foster's dampening wave continued flowing through New Alexandria systems, strengthening the bonds between human and Elysian technology. Lieutenant Kara directed her crystal shard forces to strategic positions throughout the facility, their presence cementing the alliance between former adversaries. Initiating hybrid containment protocols, Foster transmitted. Power grid accepting automated control sequences. The chamber's amplification array hummed with stable energy as the crisis subsided. Through crystal-enhanced awareness, Gerald began processing the vast potential of his evolved form. The successful integration of his human consciousness with Elysian systems opened new pathways for understanding between the two species. Harrison's team secured the chamber's critical systems, while Petrov's medical staff documented Gerald's transformation data. The hybrid technologies that had saved New Alexandria would soon provide the foundation for greater cooperation between humans and Elysians. Karina's scholarly algorithms identified optimal integration patterns in the stabilized systems, detecting multiple compatibility nodes for future hybrid development, marking primary research channels. The chamber's crystalline surfaces pulsed with regulated power as New Alexandria's hybrid network achieved full operational status. Through the facility's sensors, Gerald detected the first signs of true harmony between human and Elysian technology, a transformation as profound as his own evolution into a bridge between two worlds.